3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what day we're going to post this. We got a Pancakes and Prospects special. It's going to be tons of fun. I'm joined here by 4 of my greatest friends. Thank goodness Tony Ferrari isn't here because then I wouldn't be able to say that. He is unfortunately he's going through one today. He's up at a cottage. I think he's celebrating the end of draft season. He was supposed to be here. My hope is that he randomly pops in and we can all dunk on him a little bit. But until then, I'm joined by 3 of the best in the biz, plus my co-host, Scotty Bentley. He's also one of the best in the biz. I don't want to exclude him from that. Will Scouch, Mikael Holm, Sam McGilligan, Scotty Bentley. What's going on, guys? Prospects and Pancakes. I'm so excited.
Hi.
Now, this whole episode, this whole special was encouraged or inspired by a conversation that Mikael and I had. So I feel like we should give some backstory to this. I don't even remember what we were talking about. We were just talking about like things that made us sad. We were having a sad moment in the DMs.
Wow.
And we were like, you need to hold on to the things that make you happy in life, like brunch and pancakes. And then we made a plan, hey, once this is all over, let's go get some pancakes. You're going to come to Detroit. And I was like, why wait? So we hopped on now. We're doing a Pancakes and Prospects special. It's going to be a lot of fun. Nothing makes me happier than when my stupidest ideas come to fruition. And I have to say, this is probably at the top of the list. So Thank you all for humoring me with your presence today. I could not be more excited and thankful as well that you guys made the effort to show up here on a Sunday.
Any excuse to eat pancakes, baby.
And any excuse to dunk on Tony Ferrari as well. We wish
Also
you were here,
true.
Tony. It would be a lot of fun if you were. But let's get into the Red Wings draft. I mean, what did you guys think of it as a whole? What did you guys think of the draft as a whole? Actually, let's back this up. How are you guys feeling now that you're chilling?
I'm still going like, what the hell happened? I have no clue what the hell happened last week, but like it is what it is. Like we all knew it was going to be a clusterfuck.
I'm relieved it's over. It's over.
Yeah,
a lot of build up.
Finally, this draft class is gone, over and done with.
No.
Outside of the obvious, things to close round 1 that made this draft a little bit nauseating. What was some of the biggest surprises to you? What were some of the wow, I did not expect that moments in this draft? I think certainly some of the guys who fell into that second round surprised a lot of different people, but I'm sure there was a lot of other things as well.
I mean, I wasn't surprised, but I was also kind of surprised by a lot. But the amount of times Carolina made trades throughout the entire process was wild. I think they now have 12 picks for next year or something. Like that was bananas to me. I can't believe that they're the only team in the league that like leverages that strategy that strongly. I mean, it's I think in certain cases it didn't pay off for them, but I also think that I don't think they care. Like they're just kind of we're stockpiling and stockpiling and stockpiling. Is your cat on your head?
Oh
my god,
that's amazing.
Oh, that's great. I don't know, but yeah, that was the thing. That was the thing that stuck out to me.
The towers there. Mikael, this is if you're listening to this and can't see it, Mikael's cat is standing on top of a tower that just so happens to be directly behind Mikael's head, so it looks like there's a cat on his head.
But yeah, I mean, there's obviously shocking stuff that happened too, so like we can go through that as well. But in general, I just was really surprised I think I was surprised at the number of teams that also fell back on old habits of just drafting really big, rangy guys and hoping they work out. But I don't know, I'll pass it over to someone else who can talk now.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Quite a few of the picks in the first round made me go, what? Like, my brain did a whole range of emotions with the Ottawa pick at 10. I don't know how I feel about the pick. I'm not going to really comment on the pick itself, but when I heard U.S. national team, I was like, Chaz Lucius, or are they going to be the team that reaches and takes Postejov at 10? Are they about to do something completely crazy here that I'm not considering? And then out of every single thought that popped in my head in that millisecond, not one of them was Tyler Boucher. And when it was Tyler Boucher, I just sat there at the screen for like 2 minutes thinking about what the hell just happened and what the hell I was in for. And yeah, It really just like set the tone for what happened afterwards because it like fell apart for there.
Yeah, that pick was insane because when I was in a voice chat with our friend Jordan Mallet, who is an Ottawa fan, and his stream was ahead of mine. So all I heard from him was, "Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh no! Oh no! Oh my god! Oh my god!" And he was legit like 20 seconds ahead of me. So that was all I heard. So I was like, "Who is it?" And he was just like, "Keep going, keep going, keep going." And I was just like, and then I also heard like USN DTP, and I was like, okay, who could it be? And then it's Tyler Boucher, and there was none of the possibilities that I thought about.
That was one of the funniest moments of the draft is when they cut over to the NDDP after they drafted him and nobody batted an eye. Like nobody was ready for, they were like, wait, who? Oh, Tyler. Hey, they took Tyler. All right, everybody. Like, hey, congratulations. Like,
yeah. I mean, I feel like from what I've seen, I'm one of the more charitable people to that pick. But that's because I'm also being like extremely generous and I'm terrified of Ottawa Senators fans.
I'm not terrified of them, so I'm going to criticize the shit out of the pick.
Yeah, you wait. It'll happen to you.
It will,
but like, I mean, but seriously, I mean, with Tyler Boucher, it is shocking that he went at 10. And considering who was on the board, like I have no freaking idea how you look at Cole Sillinger on one hand and Tyler Boucher on the other and pick Tyler Boucher. But I will also say that I've seen Tyler Boucher most of the games that he did play this year, not all of them, but quite a few. And if he wasn't hurt and played the full season, I could easily see how he would be in the first round on my board. I don't think he'd be particularly high, but in a range where it's reasonable, especially in a draft as weird as this, where if you're a team like Ottawa, which I don't agree with the strategy, but if their strategy is our NHL team needs to play like this, so we're going to draft players who play like that in junior and then just keep developing them. Like, I get it, but I also go, yeah, but you're not drafting the best options. Like, you're drafting the players that fit what you think your identity could be, which is basically just all Brady Tkachuk top to bottom. But if that doesn't work, like if they play the Columbus Blue Jackets in 3 years and Cole Sillinger scores 2 on him and Tyler Boucher crushes him once, it's like, I know which one I'd rather have. So we'll see what happens, but I mean, it's still risky. And then they're going around like Trent Mann saying, well, I don't care what people say. I have my, what did he say? He said something like, oh,
I have my own resources or something like that. I was like, okay.
I have my own brain or something. I have my brain. Like,
was some with the brain.
Yeah. It's like, all right,
sure.
Good luck. Cool. Like it seems like they're just building a team of really good third line hockey players. Like a whole bunch of Barclay Gaudreaus, and it's like, all right, we'll see how that works out. I don't think anyone's like leaned into that kind of play so constantly, but I don't know.
See where it goes. It's all about the identity with the Senators. And the thing with like reaching on a player like that is if someone falls throughout the draft, let's say like Simone Robertson falling to the third, there's a bigger chance that there's something there that like everyone was seeing and scared them off because, every team made the decision to pass on them twice, or nearly every team, depending on who traded picks. But for someone to be breached on, like Tyler Boucher at 10, all it takes is one general manager that's just like, yep, I see something. There's a good chance that if Ottawa doesn't take that pick, he falls another 12, 13 spots. Or maybe he goes 3 spots later. Who the fuck actually knows? I'm certainly not one of them. But there were so many talented players on the board who, from a pure asset management point, will likely be more valuable trade assets 2 years down the line, let alone better players too. But I guess we're not looking at that when you're building an identity.
I did see Pierre McGuire yesterday at USA Hockey Arena. He was.
I'd hope he'd be there. That's what he's been talking about. So everyone's like, "Look at him!" I'm like, "Yeah, I fucking hope so."
I made a joke. Somebody tweeted me. Locked On Senators tweeted me. They were like, "Boots on the ground." And I was like, "Yeah, I bet the analytics community wishes he was booting up a spreadsheet instead."
That's not a good to see him, man.
No, I thought it was in a vacuum. It is, but not when you repeat it. I think.
Maybe like a really old, like 70s vacuum.
Yeah,
that's
folks,
like that's tough, man.
I should have put folks and 2 commas in front of it. Then that would have made it funny. Yeah. Well, so I want to go back to something that Will said about drafting the that you see teams kind of opt for the bigger, rangier play. Do you think that was just like a matter of the limited sample size or the limited live in-person viewings, if any at all. And I'm starting to wonder, like, when GMs pick guys who are smaller, do they need more viewings to confirm that the guy is going to be able to go? And then this comes down to a matter of, well, we got two guys that we're kind of even on. Let's take the bigger guy. Cause was just a pure guess, but
I just think a lot of it is NHL teams still, like, it seems like about 90% of NHL teams, when it comes to thinking outside the box, especially with defensemen, I think for about 90% of NHL teams, they've like dipped their pinky toe into new ideas and they've said, okay, we tried it there and it didn't work, right? Like they'll draft one or two skilled 5'9", 5'10" defensemen who are also measurably solid defensively, and they may not have worked out yet, or they're struggling to earn NHL minutes because coaches then don't believe in them or whatever. And then they're going, okay, well, it didn't work, so we're going to just fall back onto old habits. And they also look at I think the NHL playoffs this year broke like 10 NHL teams. It just broke them because they just looked at the Montreal Canadiens and like who was on their defense group and said, well, if that defense group can get to the Stanley Cup, then we should build look at all the contracts that were handed out. Mm-hmm. A lot of $3, $4, $5 million deals for third pair defensemen, like maybe number 4 defensemen.
What Rasmus Ristolainen got in a trade.
Yeah, got a first round pick and
not even a first round, a lottery pick.
Yeah, a lottery pick.
Like the pick that became who was it?
Wait. Oh, what? I thought Ristolainen.
No,
Isak Rosén.
Oh yeah, the Racine pick. But yeah, I think it's just old habits. Like it's like NHL teams then saw that what they think doesn't work actually still doesn't work. And now they're like, well, we may as well, like if we have to choose between a 5'11" defenseman and a 6'3" defenseman, we're taking the 6'3" one because there's more of those in the NHL, which in my view, it's like, well, yeah, there's more of those in the NHL because it's a selection bias. Like I think a lot of the best players that went undrafted were guys that were under 6 feet and play defense, but we'll have to see what happens. I mean, obviously there's limitations to their game, but you have to be aware of those limitations. Like even Sean Barons fell further than I thought he would. And I'm not the biggest Sean Barons guy, but I didn't think he would fall as far as he did. And, you know, even Dmitry Kuzmin, he had a great under 18. He showed pretty much to everyone just how skilled he was on defense for a 5'9" guy. And even he kind of, like, I saw him ranked in the second round a whole bunch before the draft. And I think he went in like the late third or something to Winnipeg. So I don't know. I think it's just, there's that bias that came roaring back, and probably largely because of the playoffs, but that's just my read.
I'm with him on this entirely. Like, I think the playoffs just convinced everybody. Like, I'm a Montreal fan, so I'm gonna be honest when I say prior to Game 5 against Toronto, I was like, this team's identity sucks. Like, I liked the idea of the whole, like, you play with your heart on your sleeve every shift, this and that. Like, yeah, that sounds great, but the actual players executing this, not really the forward core, but the defense was not good. Then a miracle run happened, which was in parts very earned and in other parts Carey Price. And
which is fine. Like
is fine. But
okay,
how many of these defensemen that got signed are going to be playing in front of a fucking Vezina tier Carey Price? Like, he made Sherrod and Edvinsson look so much better than he was. And I feel like a lot of NHL teams didn't recognize that and are now signing every Sherrod and Edvinsson they can find, drafting every Sherrod and Edvinsson they can find. And it's like, shit. Okay, sure.
Something I just want to point out that really bothers me is when the Canadiens lose, everybody's like, well, that's what happens when you pay a goalie $10.5 million. And then when they win, everybody's like, well, they wouldn't have gotten that far if Carey Price wouldn't have bailed them out the entire time. It was like, no, that was literally the plan. Yeah. You know, like,
yeah, I'm with you on that.
This discourse.
I love Carey Price to death, and I don't like the contract is whatever, but like the ability to steal the game out of fucking nothing is just beautiful. And he does it regularly.
Like, I wonder what alternate reality we'd be living in if the Montreal Canadiens lost that first round to Toronto in 6 games even. Mm-hmm. Like, they're like 10 seconds left in Game 5, puck bounces over Ilya Mikheyev's stick with a wide open net. If that puck bounces an inch less than it did, that puck is in the back of the net. Montreal goes home in 5. Mark Bergevin might be fired.
Bergevin is fired.
Maybe. I don't know.
Ducharme doesn't get the head coach job.
Yeah, like who
Logan
knows?
Mailloux probably doesn't get picked.
Who knows? And so, but now people are like, well, since Montreal pulled it off and the Toronto Maple Leafs humiliated themselves once again, we're in this situation where everybody is looking for that. They're chasing, like, I find NHL teams start to make a lot of mistakes when they're chasing something that they're not. And that to me is always really, really questionable, especially around this time of the year.
I think NHL teams also are absolutely the worst to identifying what makes a team good in the playoffs, because, or like what made a team to win. Because when Tampa won last year, they were all like, "Oh, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, it's all them. It's all Jenny Gordon. It's not their top six where they have these incredibly skilled forwards and they have like Victor Hedman and Mikhail Sergachev and all that. It's these like add-ons in the bottom six that's what makes them win.
Yeah.
And it's now this year it's instead of like looking at Montreal and seeing like, well, they had the hottest goalie for a month and a half in the world, like the best goalie, he was the best goalie in the world for a month and a half. They instead look at like their defense and just like, oh, these are big, strong defensive defensemen. That's the future. That's how you win these playoffs.
Yeah. One thing I will say as well, to bring it kind of back to the draft, is the playoffs to me, I think did teach me a lesson of that once the NHL playoffs comes around and everyone is given it 100%, teams seem to not want to play with the puck. Like, the way to win in the playoffs isn't necessarily big, physical, and heavy. It's pestering your opponent and pressuring them so hard that they mess up, and then you capitalize when they mess up. That's
shooting.
That's the
tracking.
key. So to bring that back to the draft, I'm not looking for big, heavy guys who punish people in front of the net. I'm looking for fast, agile, hardworking players who step over the boards and give you a shift that you can count on. Like, that's what you need. And that's like, people ask me what I look for in players all the time. And the thing I say always is a really nebulous concept, but pace. Like, I need guys who can get the puck, work hard and get it back, and make quick plays and think quickly. And even if you can't skate super quickly, like, your one-touch passing is really important. How you are able to connect on passes and what you're doing, it's all very important. So if I'm looking at guys who were kind of low pace and they don't really push the pace of the game very often and they kind of let the game go on around them, like, that's a big reason why I had Sasha Pastujov almost at the back of my second round. Because if someone gets him the puck in the neutral zone, he's pretty good. Like, there's skill and he can score and he's really smart with the puck. But it has to be under his terms and conditions. Whereas when I look at a guy like Fabian Lysell, I'm like, all right, even if he doesn't work out to the peak of his game and he's not the offensive wizard that he might be able to be, like, Nils Höglander is a perfect example of the type of skilled offensive player that plays with that pursuit defense style that translates itself so well, even if you're an offensively skilled guy. And you can bet on that and bumping him over the boards every game. And the same thing with Matty Beniers, and that's why he was number one for me. Because you can blatantly see that in a playoff game, if he's playing his best hockey, you're going to get something that can win in the playoffs. And if he plays like that in the regular season, you know, you might not win 60 games and he might not score 120 points, but all you need is to punch your ticket. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that it taught me, is like the physical pressure side of the NHL playoff game, where so much depends on counterattacking and pressuring when you don't have the puck. Not so much big, physical, heavy, mean defenseman. It's like, it's a completely different version of the same concept, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's like what Montreal really was just incredible at, is their way that they created pressure, the way they tracked on the forecheck, like pursuit, the second effort on every play. Like, Montreal was a team that is truly built for the idea of playoff hockey, but everyone's misunderstanding what about them worked for getting them to the cup finals. It was not Ben Sherratt being a big, mean son of a bitch. If I was recording, and I'm going to do this next year just to probably prove a point one day, I'm going to just start recording all of the plays Sherratt and Edvinsson and all of these defensemen do that are described as elite defensemen that do nothing but keep the puck stuck in their own zone and then get bailed out by Price like 10, 15 seconds later. It's like, no, they can't get the puck out of their own zone. If you're supposedly a defensive defenseman who can't get the puck out of your own zone, well, then I hope you literally never allow a goal. And considering none of them can do that, maybe we should stop prioritizing people who can deal with the problem at the last possible step and maybe just like start diffusing these issues earlier. This is why I really, really, really liked a couple of prospects defensively that a lot of people had a lot lower. And one of them is Will's boy, Jake Martin, who I don't know how the hell he didn't get drafted, because that's his specialty. It's just, I'm taking this puck and I'm going to do something and I'm going to get it out of the zone because I don't want to be here. And neither does anyone on my team. And the goalie doesn't want to be here either. So maybe we should just not be here.
Maybe not.
So all of this being said, the Red Wings with their first 3 picks accumulated an average of 6 feet 4 inches of height.
Yes.
Drafting Sebastian Cossa, Simon Edvinsson, and Shea Buliam. Simon Edvinsson was a guy who we profiled him with somebody who didn't like him. And he was obviously a very polarizing player. What is, and Will, I know I watched your episode of Scouching on this. What is your overall perception of, or just Simon Edvinsson and the Red Wings organization? How do you feel about it?
To me,
All of you.
well, okay,
We'll go around.
yeah. So Simon Edvinsson to me he's polarizing, but I don't really understand quite why. Like I think the polarization comes from how much of an impact his game could have in the NHL. But I think that the reason that it's so polarizing is because like no one actually knows. I don't think anyone actually can be like definitively sure, because so much of what's wrong with Simon Edvinsson in terms of being an impact player is mental. Like the physical tools are pretty good, especially for a guy who seems to be still kind of growing. If of all the top end defensemen, to me, he's the most defensively refined, though. Like his defensive game is very well refined, I think. And the trouble starts when he decides to pass the puck. Carrying the puck, he can be pretty decent at it. And if he gets stronger and faster over the next couple of years, then yeah. But I think the thing with Detroit is I totally can, judging by the fact that they did the reach on Seider and it's turned out the way that it has, it seems like what Detroit is looking for on defense, especially also now looking at Shea Buliam going off the board to them as well. I think they're looking at defense as just not necessarily guys who you can expect to score a lot of points with, but it's more about getting the puck up the ice one way or the other. Like they need like puck stoppers and puck transporters. And both of those guys, Edvinsson and Seider is definitely a good puck getter. So is Edvinsson. And if they can develop the rest a little bit, like they have with Seider for sure, he was a great puck carrier. And so is Edvinsson when he's good. But they need to round their game out. But I think there's a world where Simon Edvinsson could be a top 3 player out of this draft when we look back on it, just because of his potential. But there is, like, if he never sorts out the things that aren't necessarily technical, but rather seeing the ice, like his problem is just not being able to see the ice and do much with it, unless he's just barreling up the ice or dumping it. It's just, he's a weird character. He's a weird guy, but I think if you wanted a defenseman in the top 10 this year, he's probably I think the best chance of being a net positive defensive player out of all of them. And I think his ceiling is extremely high.
One of the things that I kind of thought while I was watching your episode on him was that, like, sometimes he looks like he gets the puck and he just goes, well, it'd be better to turn this puck over in the neutral zone than right here. So he just like does it real quick. And like, it's like he doesn't really believe that there's a situation where he can get out of that sometimes. And so he's just like, I'll just turn it over elsewhere.
Potentially. Yeah. But again, like once in a while, and I've watched him for 2 years now, like once in a while you see some crazy high end skill out of him that you don't see out of defensemen that are 6'5". Like everybody talks about Owen Power being so skilled for a guy his size. I think Simon Edvinsson, when he's really dialed in, is a much more deceptive, skilled offensive defenseman, but it just happens so rarely. And I don't know, he's a weird one, but I mean, and at 6, you could make the argument that William Eklund would be the guy that you go for, but I think Simon Edvinsson's going to be a rock solid defenseman and with potential for a lot more than just that.
What do you got, Mikael? Because I know, you obviously were watching the Swedes pretty close this year. Had William Eklund number 1 on your board, thought he was the best player in the draft. I thought he was probably going to Detroit at 6. They end up going Edvinsson.
Yeah, that's the only knock I have on the pick, really, is that they took Edvinsson over Eklund. I don't think picking Edvinsson at 6 is that bad otherwise. I think it's a perfectly reasonable pick. And Will has said almost everything that that I agree with a lot. That we've spoken about Edvinsson before us too, and it's just like the defensive game is there already. So he's already got the floor like almost like he's got it figured out. He's gonna be an NHL player, and if he doesn't like turn out to be a lot, he's still gonna be a defensive bottom pairing guy that's gonna do well defensively. But like
Jonathan
as
Ericsson.
Will said, sorry,
Jonathan Ericsson 2.0.
Yeah, but probably better.
Well, I would hope so.
I would hope better.
No, poor Jonathan Ericsson. Great career, double digits in amount of years played, but he just took a beating for every single one of them here in Detroit.
So what I think also is a little bit. This is only a theory that I'm the only one that has probably written about this and also thought about it. But Simon Edvinsson was 6 foot 2 years ago. So he's grown 5 inches in 2 years. And 5 inches isn't that much, but that's when, like, if you're going from 5'5" to 5'10", maybe. But going from 6 foot to 6'5" is quite the growth spurt, especially when you're like 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he needs to. I think he has issues with his like technique when he's trying to pass the puck and trying to like just do these regular things, because I think he just like haven't gotten used to his big body yet. And he also needs to grow. Like he's pretty lanky still, like getting stronger, just all that. I think he's gonna sort out a lot of issues he has. Then of course is his decision making that is like mental, but that is also something I think he can sort out, because sometimes you see him like just threading passes and doing like great work, just like finding the right lanes and stuff. So I think the people that had Simon Edvinsson very low because of his issues with passing are overlooking a lot of things that he does extremely well already as a 17-year-old or 18-year-old he's now. But I think he's a perfectly fine pick.
To that point about him just recently growing, is like that's kind of the gist that you get. And like Chris Draper mentioned during the press conference after they drafted him that they want him to add size, they want him to add muscle. And I just wonder how much of that, because his poor decision making, it just typically looks like a rush decision that went poorly, and so I wonder, I don't know what it's like to grow 5 inches and then be getting hit in a hockey game, like that. There's got to be some pretty high level of uncomfortability there where you're like, man, I don't know how to fall anymore. Like it's a different ball game. You're thinner, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with it as well.
I am extremely uncoordinated and also 6'4", and I totally get
how many times
why
on this podcast.
I totally get why the idea that Edvinsson is just still figuring out just the finer technical details,
like Bambi.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Bambi.
Like, man, he's just.
There you go.
Sometimes I started to pick up on this towards the end when I was watching him. Sometimes there seems to be a connection towards kind of bobbling the puck and losing control a little bit when trying to make a move. And when he gets his tunnel vision and starts losing control of the play. And when he has the puck completely settled on his stick and he's just able to play his game is when you start to really see the vision and the creativity show through. And I agree with what Will said. It took me a while to see it, and I didn't even start to notice it until he pointed it out. But like his defensive game is, especially in the Allsvenskan, is actually really projectable, and I'm not really concerned with that. He does so many things great until suddenly he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just kind of like the thing with Edvinsson, and you hope that he just stops making those decisions. As for Detroit taking him, I said the same thing. I think I said it to your DMs after the draft. It's like, man, I see what they're going with. It's Mo Seider 2.0, except this one's less of a reach. He's really, really moldable, and development can turn him into an absolute specimen of a hockey player. And there's so much to work with. I'm probably going to regret being lower on him, to be honest with you. Like, I just see things, I guess, in other prospects, but this is one of those cases where I have a feeling like 3 years down the line, I'm going to look back, shit. Well, all right, well, lesson learned.
Yeah, like the thing that's kind of funny to me is like I don't know exactly if anyone did this specifically, but seeing people putting Owen Power at like 1 and Simon Edvinsson at like 13.
Yeah, like
and it's
guys,
like, hey,
no, they're too similar in terms of what you're looking for and what they're hoping there be to see a 13 pick difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought Edvinsson kind of went undervalued past a certain point, but I mean, I sat there really frustrated watching him a lot this year but that's only really because his like potential is up here.
Yeah.
And you know what he could be capable of. And yeah, like Mikael said, like the growth spurt, even I noticed like watching him last year, I think he was listed last year with Frölunda at like 6'1" or 6'2". And this year he bumped up from 6'4" to 6'5" mid-season. And like, that's a lot. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall. I can't imagine being a teenager and putting on another 5 inches. So like, I don't know. I think it's a nice upside pick. Like, he's not in the NHL next season. I don't even think it'll be this season after this one, but he is a heck of a player. And at least I think he could be. And beyond that, like Mikael said, the only other guy that I really would say I would like punch my table and try to get Steve Yzerman to take is William Eklund. But the rest of the pack at this point, like that's the trouble with this year's draft is there were so many guys at pretty much every pick where you're like, yeah, but you could also get this and do this, and that would be cool, and go all over the place. But yeah, it was solid, and I think with Steve Yzerman, like based on what they've done with Mo Seider as well, like I think that there's a pattern there, and we'll see what happens.
Now,
I think also just one last thing about Edvinsson is that the strength part and stuff like that he's gonna get because his mom is a personal trainer already. Like he has a private trainer who's his mom, so he's gonna get all that like work done immediately. But he's also in the premier Swedish team that develops defensemen and like takes them to the next level. All of them, everyone who goes there, and he's at Frölunda who does that. Like they took you remember the insane Minnesota pick Filip Johansson who went picked in the first round in 2018, I think, where everyone was like, "What?" Mm-hmm. He was great this year because he plays for Frölunda. Like they take defensemen and they develop them properly. So I think just being there as well, just getting developed, and he's also their like prime, their big diamond player that is young. He's gonna get the great development there, and I think that's also a part that you really need to think about when you draft players, because especially from Europe, like what team are they on? And I think Frölunda is the best team you can be on if you're a defenseman.
Well, half of the Red Wings prospect pipeline is in Frölunda, so there's that as well. Now, before we get off of Edvinsson, what do you see as like the ideal D partner? Is there one in Detroit's system that you see him kind of eventually partnering up with?
Seider, right-handed.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would be ridiculous someday. Like, holy crap, I really do think those two guys could really complement each other in terms of being defensive monsters who very quickly get the puck back or just pursuit animals the second the puck is across the blue line. Pressure, using all bit of their size and their reach to just smother people, get the puck back, just completely shut off passing lanes and zones, and then work together and facilitate it back up the other way. Both have the skating ability to jump in as forwards. Both have the means to be really capable players in the offensive zone. Oh, wow. That sounds terrifying in the playoffs.
Imagine, I was just going to say, imagine going
that
into
just
corner
sounds
against those
terrifying.
5 minutes a night.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see Edvinsson with, like, there's a few of them. I'm just looking now. Like, Philip Hronek could be an interesting one with him. Albert Johansson, if he works out, I think could be an interesting complement, a bit more offensive.
Because you said that too, somebody who can maybe move a little bit, like somebody
Troy Stetcher, like
those guys,
those kinds of guys. William Verlinder even like might be an interesting complement, but I don't know if I would do that. That's a little bit too cowboy hockey. But I mean, they've got options.
Detroit's gonna have the largest blue line in history or something.
They would all be effective skaters who could transition the puck.
Yeah,
Edvinsson, Seider, William, and Verlinder all are above like 6'4" or something.
Yeah.
Wow, man, they're gonna be good. Holy crap!
We certainly hope so.
We hope. Like, I'm seeing what Yzerman's going for with this defensive group going forward, and I'm just like, Oh, wow. That's talk about building an identity about something. Okay, if you're going to build an identity, pick that. Like, that makes me go when Edvinsson was picked over Eklund, I was like, okay, I wouldn't have done it. I'm surprised he did it, but he's doing something. And it's Steve Yzerman. So I'm just going to shut up and just like watch how he does it. And just this conversation alone is making me be more and more. I'm like, man, he really is doing something. I can't wait to see how this turns out.
I will say that I'm looking at their forward group, and it would be nice to have a forward in your system that's like, like
That's
William
what the
Eklund.
2022 drafts for, baby.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, like, I'm looking at their defense pipeline, and it's insane. Like Moritz, Seider, Albert Johansson, Gustav Lindstrom is okay, I guess. But like Philip Hronek, Antti Tuomisto, Kasper Kankensalo is actually still pretty solid defensively, I guess. Simon Edvinsson too, but William Wallinder, if they like Shai Bunim. But like, they've got a lot. And up front, like Master Simone, Teddy Niederbach, Lucas Raymond, like that's good. But
they need
anyway,
more.
but Simon Edvinsson is not a bad thing at all to have in your system. That's for sure.
One of the things when I was at the World Junior Showcase this week, I asked Nate Lehman, I go, does Shai Bunim do anything unique? Because he was playing in a defense corps with like Luke Hughes, Jake Sanderson. I was like, what does he bring that's unique to those guys? And he's like, well, he takes one step and he's from the wall to the middle of the blue line. So,
yep.
And you absolutely love that. Now, the 15th pick in the 2021 NHL draft, not Jesper Wallstedt, much to my chagrin at the time. 2 seconds after the pick was made, I came back around on it. I said, Steve, I trust you. We're all good. What do you guys got on Sebastian Cossa? And how surprised were you that this pick came at 15?
Sam, do you have something to say?
I don't know goalies. Goalies are voodoo. I don't think anyone knows goalies. I just think people pretend they know goalies. I'm half kidding. I am. No, there is obviously an art to goaltending scouting that I will not bother to learn because it is definitely beyond my skill set. But I just think there's so much post-draft development that is the biggest factor in who makes it to the NHL and who doesn't, to the point where I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to go with NHL scouts on this one. I thought Volso was better. I think his accomplishments were better. I think the fact that he played in the SHL as a draft year for the first time ever in one of the major pro leagues is just like incredible. And he didn't look like garbage. In fact, he actually looked good at times and extremely calm. And like, to me, those are all the things that I know. And I looked at and went, wow, he's interesting. But that's the extent of what I know. And Kossa's technically taller and more athletic, I believe. And I'm sure someone way better than me could come up with a reason why that is worth going for first. I just stay clear of CHL goalies because they almost always disappoint in the first 3 rounds or get overdrafted.
On one hand, that's true. On the other hand, Cossa was like a 945 goaltender, like a insane.
Yes, but man, Edmonton was so much better than the rest of them. Even when when Gunther went away, he only played half of their games because he went away for the U18s. Yep. They still finished with a plus 64 goal differential and a 20-something game sample. Yep. Where only one other team even was above 0. And the other 3 were like minus 30 or something ridiculous. Edmonton was dominant from every second, whether Gunther's in the lineup or not. And on the off chance something made it through, Cossa made it look easy. Yeah. But like, I don't know. It's just, that's 20 game sample size, that terrible division, Edmonton being the Harlem Globetrotters of the WHL. It's just like all of that are red flags, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like Cossa could still, he's huge and he moves really well.
The thing though with me and the Cossa pick is like, it's a big gamble, but Detroit had the pieces to take a gamble. Mm-hmm. Like they drafted so often and they had so many friggin' picks that if they really do think Sebastian Cossa is like the starting goaltender for the future for them, which you probably do if you trade up from 23 and trade that much to get him, like whatever. I would have gone with Wallstedt, but I do know that depending on the team, like some people were a little bit more hesitant to like add him to their program for one reason or another. Whereas with Cossa, like they see him as just a Hockey Canada rock star. And if you're a Hockey Canada rock star, you can't do wrong. And, like teams will always lean North American gun to their head. So with Cossa, I get it. We'll see what happens. Even if it doesn't work out and he's like a good backup for Detroit, let's say it's Nedeljkovic, and Kossa's your backup, like obviously you gave up a lot, and like at 23 and 48, you could have added some really, really good players. Whatever, like whatever, you're going to be fine.
Well, and I think too that honestly, that what really kind of sold him on Cossa was the conversations that they had with him and just like his, I don't know if warrior mentality is the right way to put it, but they were like, he was the most engaged. He was asking questions. He lit up when, that he had a phone call with Chris Osgood and he was asking him about Dominic Hasek's work ethic, like just all those types of things that I think honestly kind of at the end of the day pushed him to that forefront through those conversations. And he's been through a lot, like, and I didn't really know this until after, but, just going through reading his backstory with the Fort McMurray wildfires and, things like the kid he has an exceptional head on his shoulders from what I understand. And I would imagine that, when you're picking between two goaltenders and you feel like you're looking at one of them and you can feel genuity or whatever it is, from that person, maybe that's probably what ends up going ahead and encourages you to
absolutely
make that pick.
It's such a mental thing with goaltending. So I totally buy in more, especially at that position relative to others, that how a player perceives in an interview matters.
Which is really funny because we prepped Jesper Wallstedt for the draft by sending it. When we interviewed him, we had like a lightning round of like questions to prepare him for the draft. So we were like, "What's your favorite color?" And he's like, "Yellow." We all just yelled wrong. What's cat or dogs? Cats. And then like half of us said wrong, half of us said right. So it's disappointing to hear that he didn't interview well.
Well, I don't know.
We did all we could.
Yeah, we did. We can only do so much over here.
Like I don't know. Like on one hand, all that's true. Like obviously pedigree and personality and like who you are matters. But like at the same time, Jesper Wallstedt, like goalies are notoriously weird.
Yeah.
And Jesper Wallstedt was 15 playing against 19-year-olds. Like, and then when
that's my argument as well.
Yeah.
That, like he's played at the same level Sebastian Cossa has for 5 years almost.
Yeah.
Like,
so like and I think that there's also like cultural differences. Like the wrong North American person around Scandinavian people can be a little bit like they might take it differently than anticipated. Like sometimes people are just different. Like I've been to Scandinavia and like sometimes it does feel like if you're more personable of a person, it might be hard to like break through that initial barrier with someone you've never met before that is Scandinavian, because they're just more reserved and quiet and introverted, I guess, as opposed to like, that's been my experience. And Mikael, you can obviously step in, but like that's been my experience. And I can see how in a certain scenario, not saying this is what happened, but like I can see how in a certain scenario with certain people or the different individuals on a North American staff, they might sit down with a kid who might be like that and be like, well, that didn't go super well. Whereas for them, it's just like they're not super comfortable or they're just kind of out of their element. I don't know. There could be a countless number of reasons why people might have undervalued Jesper Wallstedt. But either way, I mean, like I think at some point some NHL team was just going to go, okay, but he's Jesper Wall. Like he's
I'm just surprised that didn't happen earlier. Like with as much as there was discussion about like, oh, this is a weak draft class, I figured that you would see a lot of swings. I figured you would see Aatu Räty not make it to 15, and I was really surprised with the lack of swings at times on particular guys. And like the Räty thing already looks like a bad decision. He's leading the World Junior Showcase in scoring this last week after going 52nd overall. Like that part was strange to me, that guys with the huge upside like Räty and Wallstedt just fell.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about, well, we kind of touched on Shea Buium. I want to talk about Carter Mazur because he is maybe my sneaky favorite pick in this class. Overager, drafted in the 3rd round, 70th overall, was not good in his draft season, scored 2 goals before COVID shut everything down. And he was like, oh, wow, okay, I can do this. He put on 30 pounds over the pandemic, not through diet, by eating literally whatever. He said his mom's wet burritos were his favorite meal.
What burritos?
I said, oh, is that a cheat meal? He said, no, I just ate whatever. He said, I just went for calories, which I really love.
Damn.
And so he comes out, he has a point per game in the USHL last year, gets drafted in the 3rd round. And then this week at the World Junior Showcase is looking really, really impressive. He was somebody that I did not know anything about heading into this draft. And now I really see him as one of the maybe highest upside picks that they made, which is kind of saying something.
I saw a bit of him. I mean, I only saw a bit of him because I was watching Matt Nyes this year. The thing, like, I didn't really come away super impressed with any of the Tri-City guys a ton, although they all sort of showed flashes here and there. Like, Mazur certainly has puck management skills that certainly help anchor a line. Like, it's kind of that Niederbach kind of pick where you're not going to, like, you don't really notice him a ton, but he's facilitating play pretty well. And I didn't have him ranked. I didn't think he was going to go as high as he did. Like, where was it? It was what, 70th?
70, yeah.
You know, like, I kind of get it, but again, like, if I'm drafting guys that are re-entries, like, I feel like you generally need to really aim high to hit and be reliable, especially at 70th overall. But I don't know, like, I did come away impressed. And again, last year I was also pretty low on Teddy Niederbach because, again, the questions I have are more around projection to the NHL. So with Mazur, I mean, who knows? He's a wild card. And I think I just look at who was on the board and who went pretty shortly after him. Simon Robertson, Ayrton Martino, Ryder Korzak, Cole Huckins, Brent Johnson, Dmitry Kuzmin, Caden Bankier, even Brett Harrison, Kirill Kirsanov. Like, there's a lot of names where I'm going, yeah, I'd probably take those guys over a Carter Mazur, like a re-entry swing, but he's not a terrible option, I don't think. I just haven't seen much where I'm like, oh my God, this guy's tremendously valuable. But I'll take your word for it that he was very impressive at the summit of the series this week, but I haven't had the time to watch much of it.
I haven't watched much either, but when I first saw the pick for a split second, my brain was like, who? Just because, like,
yeah.
I didn't even rank Matthew Nyes because I didn't watch enough Tri-City, because I didn't see that team enough or him enough, and I didn't feel comfortable with the sample size placing him somewhere because it would have just been a complete guess. So I don't really know what else to say about Mazur other than there's just names that were taken afterwards where I would have been like,
Well, yeah, I mean,
probably
that
went
run
with one
of
of those
3
guys.
was like all guys who could have. I mean, it really, like, this range in general was like just chock full of like fringe guys that kind of fell, and Postioff and Salmonen and Sfozil and then the Red Wings directly in the middle of that go Carter Mazur. And
Yeah,
interesting.
We'll see.
That's the range where it becomes pretty forgivable very quickly to just be like, yeah, you can swing on a guy here. Like, obviously, if someone's falling from the first and you haven't taken them yet, you don't agree with that they're a first round talent. So I think Simon Robertson was the pick to make, but it doesn't mean that he was the pick to make. And this is the swing for a home run territory. And if it doesn't work out, well, it was a 3rd round pick. It probably wasn't going to work out anyways.
That's
my problem with it as well. Like, you have immediately after Simon Robertson goes to St. Louis, and you have that guy, and it's like, to me, it feels like, who got picked ahead of Simon Robertson? Oh, Carter Mazur was picked just ahead of Simon Robertson by Detroit, like in the future. Because like Robertson fell 50 spots for me. 60 spots.
Yeah.
Even. So like, it's I guess it's a difference in how you rate talent and how you scout. But I think it's hard to look at a pick like that and just like see Simon Robertson go immediately after in the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fascinating. I'd love to take, like, Carter Mazur's a 19-year-old playing in the USHL, where Simone Robertson at the junior level in Sweden was like almost 2 points per game and dominant. And I would love to see Carter Mazur on an SHL ice surface and playing SHL hockey, because when Simone Robertson was playing SHL hockey, he actually looked pretty good. It's just whenever he touched international ice, and still seems to be from this week watching him play for Sweden, is just not good on international ice right now with Sweden. I don't understand how that happens, but if you watch him in the SHL and even in the junior level last year, like there's some holes in his game, but
There's an effective hockey player there.
that guy should be a thing. But again, like Sam said, like I don't want to talk about Carter Mazur for half an hour, but like if you think even at that range of the draft, like if you think Carter Mazur being a captain of his team and being a hardworking guy and putting on all that weight and all doing all this stuff right, if you think that through all of this you're going to end up with a replacement level player on an ELC that can chip in, that fits in on your like fourth line, and you get it with the 70th overall pick, and assuming the first three guys they picked are NHL players, great. You've got 4 successful draft picks, right? Like most picks in that range probably won't work out. There are guys that I think that are better bets, but again, like I'm not sitting there interviewing 300 kids, and I don't have a team of people like projecting or coaches telling me like this is what we're looking for and why. I'm just looking at how the players play and going like, well, here's the guys that I would add, but like teams have different priorities. So Mazur there might be better players, but even if Mazur turns out to be a guy and just you plug him in center or wing, whatever you want, I don't care, and he's fine, then at 70th overall, you did great. So, we could split hairs, but who knows? We'll see in 5 years.
Well, what I think is interesting about the draft is we mentioned the size of the top, right? They go 6'5", 6'6", 6'3", or something like that. And then their next 3 picks are all 6 foot and below. And the next one being Redmond Savage, who's 5'11". Talk to me about Red Savage, because I'm pretty sure that in the post-draft press conference, Chris Draper was like, this kid is nails defensively, shows good offensive upside at times, but the output or production numbers aren't there. So we want him to go to Miami and just light up the scoreboard. He's going to University of Miami next year, and that kind of is what it sounds like they have. His primary development task is just put the puck in the back of the net as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in on him. I mean, because he's in exactly the right case of the player that I was talking about, where you draft them, you see the NHL playoffs, and you see those guys who are good with the pressure and the speed and the aggression, and they still have some skill to play with. And Red Savage kind of is that. Like him and another guy on that team, I think he went undrafted, but Caden Brown. Those two guys were guys that when I was watching the NTDP, I was kind of taken with their potential as like even just as a winger, just flying around the ice, busting up plays and turning play around and doing the right stuff that, you just need to see. And that's the type of pick at 114. Like, yeah, Carter Mazur might be a nice leadership guy, a nice meat and potatoes player, physical, whatever. But Red Savage is a guy where I could actually see like good impact, even if he might only score 20 or 30 points in a season as like a third line or fourth line winger. I don't really care because it's 114 overall. And I think that you could see that out of his game. He just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And if you have that can be valuable, especially if he's smart enough to, make a quick pass once he turns pucks over and has good reads of the ice. But I was a fan of him, and I was pretty happy to see him get drafted for sure.
I kind of was a little shocked he fell to the 4th, because even though he's 5'11", which I guess in terms of NHL general manager scopes is small, he doesn't play small. He's got a lot of heart to him. He's just got a lot of those traits that you think NHL general managers are normally attracted to. But I guess they looked at the size weight combo and went, yeah, but it won't work in the playoffs because everyone's got to be big. So then they just like passed up on him instead. And I think Detroit was just like, well, shit. Okay, sure. Took him in the 4th. I was lower. I saw a lot of public outings that had him in like the top 50. Not a lot, but there was more than enough that it became notable. And I was just like, okay, it's not my bet. I wouldn't draft him that high because I don't know about the pure play driving upside there. But like as an energy player you get in the 3rd round or beyond, I think that's pretty solid. Getting him in the 4th round, that's crazy. I really thought he was like a lock for the top like 45. I was a little shocked that he didn't go, just because he really feels like an NHL general manager's type player. And maybe if he's 2 inches taller, he is, but he wasn't this year, I guess. So Detroit's win.
Yeah.
Plus he has an awesome name.
Yeah, like that name is
That helps
awesome.
a lot.
It is a
Red
great name.
Savage. Are you serious?
Like, I wish I was
Helps a
kidding,
lot.
but like, you know, you guys do your that you put very a lot of work into judging these players. Me, I'm very much off of like names. Like, names mean a lot to me. A good example of this would be when we had Dylan Griffin on, and I said Kirill Kirsanov sounds like Kirill Kaprizov.
Mm.
Go
Therefore,
ahead. Yeah. and Red Savage is that guy to me. Like, and this is honestly, like, I'm kind of joking, but there is a part of my brain that's like, if he gets to a point where fans get excited about him and he can become a fan favorite, I feel like that can do something for a player at a certain point.
Yeah.
You know, and like,
Yeah, absolutely. Jersey sales are jersey sales, man.
yeah.
Hell yeah,
absolutely.
baby.
hell yeah.
So then with their next pick, they get another 6-footer, a center out of Sweden, Liam Dower Nilsson. Was this a pick that was way down the board for you guys? Was this a steal for them, or is that kind of where you expected him to go?
Go, Mikael, go.
Yeah, it's all you.
This is probably, I thought he was going to go higher because he was just like higher on a lot of boards. He was like in the 70s, 60s, 70s or something like that. I think it was a fine pick it was the 5th round, right? So 134, I see here. So yeah, I think it was fine at that range. He is a guy that has some issues playing 5-on-5 hockey, but when he plays 5-on-4 and on the power play, he's just making that space behind the opposition net to his own office. Like, he's a new manager at the Gretzky's office, I think I said before. So like he completely runs the power play sometimes from back there, and I think that's kind of intriguing that he can, like, he's very good at finding and setting up goals from behind the net. And he's pretty decent defensively. He gets out of trouble pretty good. Like, if he gets swarmed or like attacked by the opposition, he can get out of that. But yes, he's not a great skater. He's pretty slow, and yeah, his 5-on-5 play has a lot more to be desired. And I think it was him that I called an accidental menace that when we talked about him.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, it's an okay pick. I had him around here. I think there were some Swedish players I would have taken ahead of him, for example, but I think it was all right.
I forgot we called him the unintentional menace. I forgot we gave him that label. Yeah.
The one of the things that I know a lot of the Swedes were asked during the draft process when they were getting interviewed was if you had to pick another one of your teammates to get drafted to play along with you, or it was something along that, who would you pick? And I think a lot of them picked Liam Dower Nilsson. What do you make of that? And what do you think NHL GMs see in that? I mean, it kind of sounds obvious, but
I think it's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, he was the team captain at the under-18s for Sweden. So I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will.
And you can kind of see, like, sometimes you see players where they play, you know, if you put your sort of coaching hat on, you kind of see that they play like a captain. Like, they play. There's a couple of Swedes this year like that, and Dower Nilsson was one of them. I just didn't have him ranked because I just felt like, relative to a guy like Juanberg, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but just like that guy, I think has more pace and speed to his game a little bit than Dower Nilsson, and I feel like that's a little bit more projectable. But they both play a very similar sort of cerebral 200-foot kind of game without a ton of activity. Like, but you can tell, like, whenever Dower Nilsson gets the puck, he kind of isn't necessarily thinking entirely about what he can do, but more about like what his team can do. You know, he's selfless. He has good vision with the puck, nice, simple thinking, but effective. And I think that a lot of young players, I think, and this happened with Jack Hughes and Patrick Moynihan a while back, where they asked him the same question and he said Patrick Moynihan. And I think with Moynihan, I remember watching him and thinking the same thing. Like, he's a guy who objectively just does not have the same level of talent as maybe a lot of other guys on the draft board in the same range. But the way he plays the game and like the way he uses his line mates and his teammates and the way he maybe off the ice, like maybe in the dressing room or something, like just the way that they present themselves and the way they think about the game is just something where it's like the more talented players go, I respect him. And like, I'm glad that he's a teammate of mine because he is a good example of like how he can make it work when he's not necessarily maybe on the level of the top 6 on the team. So I think there's a few guys that are like that. And I think that's valuable. And I think that's a nice bet to make. Like I was pleasantly surprised that Dower Nilsson ended up in Detroit. I had him at one point the season early. I had him like high in my second round, and I thought this guy could really be something because of how smart he is. But there just wasn't, especially once he got out of the junior level, like his game kind of stagnated, and he was having trouble contributing consistently at 5-on-5. And I felt that his pace and lack of foot speed was a real issue that was kind of dragging him back. But that doesn't mean it's never going to get fixed. I mean, we're talking about the 134th overall pick anyway. So like, who cares? There are guys that I might have made a bet on, of course, but he's smart and responsible. And he's one of those guys that, like sometimes you just get captains who are just the best player on the team, but I think he's a captain because he's a captain. Like you hate to use the word intangibles, but he does have that sort of method to his game where it's, you can latch onto it pretty easily and say, okay, well, if this works out, he's going to play a way that we really like. So, or that as a team works for us. So we'll see what happens with him, but that's what stuck out about me or stuck out, not about me, but to me. But yeah, unfortunately he wasn't a guy on my list, but I can absolutely see why he was picked.
Yeah, he also has a story that you can get behind him because he had like a tough childhood, losing his mom at a very young age and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things with him that you can like get behind and feel like you can like feel strongly for him. So I think, I think that's also part of why a lot of people like him.
Well, and him and Simon Edvinsson are best friends. There's a feel-good story on that front, too. Yeah. That was a pretty cool draft day thing. They said they were watching the draft together, and every time the Red Wings picked, he was like, come on, pick Liam, and then eventually it happened. So pretty cool story there. I mean, do you like the idea? Something I'm curious about, like, what do you guys make of the Red Wings having so many Swedish prospects? And,
they're capitalizing on a market that is just, like I think European scouting in the NHL is just really inefficient, and Detroit is just recognizing all of this ridiculously good talent coming out of Sweden and taking it and just running with it. Like Lucas Raymond at 4th, brilliant. Wallinder's the first pick in the second round. Yeah, okay, that was great. Niederbach at 51, that's value in my eyes. I had him at the end of the first. He missed his entire draft -1. And then came back and looked like he didn't miss a beat. That stood out. Edvinsson at 6. Well, I mean, someone was probably going to take Edvinsson in that range, but like that's another. Like they see Sweden and they just see opportunity, I guess, in players who are slipping. Who, if Liam Dower Nilsson played in the OHL, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Yeah, even if he was the exact same player,
I could see that.
Like, there's just players who I'm just like, hey, if you swap the opportunities, one's going 2 rounds sooner, one's going 2 rounds later. Like, every single draft. It's not just Sweden. It's Finland, Russia, all the European countries pretty much are being underscouted pretty much by most of the teams in the league.
I think also that Detroit has Håkan Andersson when it comes down to an argument of picking the Swede or the Canadian guy. Håkan Andersson says, look at my resume, and you see Niklas Lidström and Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg and Sergei Fedorov, and you see like just all these names. And then he's going to win the argument. Like that's the thing. Like if he bangs his hand on the table, everyone's going to listen. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a part of it as well with the
Detroit. And most teams don't have that luxury.
Yeah, they didn't do that for goalie though.
Maybe not.
Well, that just bears more. If anything, that bears more weight into the fact that Cossa over Wallstedt is kind of legitimate. Like if it was a different team that does that, I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. It's specifically because it was Detroit and their affinity for Swedes that made the decision where I'm just like, okay, this is why I need to shut up about goalies. I don't know shit.
It was just a paradigm shift that I wasn't necessarily ready for.
Yeah, I was just like, say when the move happened, like everyone was like goalie, 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 and I was just like, I'm pretty sure everyone I knew probably had Wallstedt already in their head.
Dude,
and then I heard Cossa. And
So did we.
Oh my
What?
goodness. So we were at the Red Wings draft party. We were at LCA. We had because we had Wallstedt on the show, we had arranged with him to FaceTime us on draft night if he called the show. So Detroit trades up. The pick is 15. We're at this draft party and we're going like nuts. We're like, oh my, like they got the defenseman at 6 and they're getting the goalie. I'm getting ready to record the screen so we can send him the video and he'll FaceTime us and it'll be so sick. And then like out of the WHL, and I was just like, what? And like everybody was like, oh no. And it was so brutal, but it was honestly it was really funny in hindsight, and I'm really happy for Sebastian Cossa, and I hope he's the best goaltender in this draft because he plays for a hockey team that I love.
Of course.
But I'm so with you, and it just set us up for like, oh, there's no way this pick isn't Jesper Wallstedt, and then I was ready to bet my life on it, and thank goodness.
We were talking with like everybody there, people we hadn't talked to all night, random people were walking up to us like, it's gotta be Wallstedt, right? We're like, yeah, like, of course it is.
Of course, how could it not be?
Unreal.
And then as far as another thing that I would like to kind of get your guys' thoughts on is the growing alumni base that the Red Wings have in Sweden. I mean, how many of these guys, I talked to 3 of them this week, Wallinder, Niederbach, guys who were basically said that Nicholas Kronwall is talking to him every week and telling them what they're doing right, telling them what they're doing wrong. What do you like about having so many Swedes that used to play for the Wings that I assume those guys probably looked up to growing up over there now being their mentors and stuff like that too? Like for me, that's
just smart.
Yeah. That's
just smart.
Yeah.
Like it's just really good. It's just development, man. That's just development done right. Getting people that the players will listen to, telling them things that will further their careers in the right direction.
Yeah.
They can't, Detroit's not over there working with them daily, but they've got former players who have already got the respect authority built right in because of who they are, telling them what they need to do, trimming the fat, this and that. It might not be giving them the playing advice they need, but just the mental adjustments of anything, just of what they need to know going up ahead, like for what's going to be coming ahead in the next few years. Like, come on, what's the downside, really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the way I view it. It's just like, I don't know. I don't really see much harm coming from it. Might not be too much good. Or maybe in one specific case, it's the difference maker between a player making some mental breakthrough or something and then becoming better than you expected. Like, okay.
Just
good asset management.
Yeah, exactly. Just using everything you have to develop these players the way you want them. So, yeah, it's smart. And I saw Nicholas Kronwall I was at the Frölunda Djurgården games in the playoffs in Gothenburg, and the draft eligible players that was playing was William Eklund, and then on the first game, Liam Dower Nilsson was on the bench for Frölunda, and on the second game, Simon Edvinsson was on the bench for Frölunda. So I thought they were going to go with Eklund, but I guess he saw something out of those 2 guys that were on the bench instead. So that's fun at least.
I think again, like Sam kind of said, it's just smart to do stuff like that. Like you look around the league, and I know that different teams have different development strategies, like wildly different, ranging from doing things and doing nothing.
Yep.
And that to me blows my mind. And I think that you look around the league as well, and sometimes you see teams, again, that whole thing of like dipping your toe into the pool and thinking you've gone swimming. Like they'll draft a Finn who should have been drafted in the 2nd round, but they'll get him in the 4th round. And the rest of their draft picks are all North Americans, or they'll have like a Swede or a Russian. And then they bring them over to North America and they struggle to adjust. And it's like, well, yeah, I probably would too if I was the only Swedish kid that was on my way over there. I've never been away from home. I'm living in, like, I can't even imagine going from, say, I don't know, Timrå to like, I'm trying to think of like Iowa and playing for like Minnesota's minor league team. It's like, that is an adjustment, like, no matter which way you slice it. And if you haven't been in contact with the team the whole time along the way to be like, hey, let's keep in touch, let's get you developed, and like you can have connections with other players that your team has drafted, even if it's just a guy or two. I think that is a factor as well. Like if you're going to go with drafting Europeans, you have to make them comfortable culturally and personally with the idea of like being part of a team where you can feel comfortable communicating with people, feel comfortable like being on the same page as them. And I think there's a big part of, especially with regards to drafting and development, like Sam said earlier, development is arguably more important than just picking good players at draft time.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to know exactly what you're getting in players, obviously at draft time, and know where their games could go, but then you actually have to exacerbate that and turn it into what you think you could turn it into. And I think a big part of that is building that backbone of comfort with everybody, like not that you think that NHL locker rooms should be cliquey or anything, but you want them adjusting and feeling comfortable, because that's when people are most effective generally. So obviously that's not a perfect rule, but it just makes sense. Like it's just the way to do it. So, obviously you don't want to just draft a whole bunch of people who are already friends with each other, but I'm basically just saying like, you don't want to have one kid in the corner who barely speaks English and can only speak Finnish and has no one else to talk to, because otherwise you're Jesse Puljujärvi, and then everyone thinks you're like a quiet idiot who doesn't know how to speak English. And then it's like, that can get out and be misconstrued and whatever. So it hurts you. So I think it's just smart development strategy, and like even just talking to your players and just like forming a personal relationship with them. It's something that I don't think happens across the league, but like, what else are you doing for them?
Yeah,
what's the point of drafting if you won't talk to them?
There should be a mutual interest from both the team and player perspective of them working together to become the best player possible. Like the player should want to do what the team says, because the team wants them to be the best player available and they want to be the best player available. But there has to be like open communication between the two on a pretty regular basis for them to actually be on the same path together. The more room for interpretation the team leaves the kid, the larger the possibility that they're going down the wrong path development wise, and the team's not there to do something about it. And then 2 years later, they show up in the AHL and they're like, what the fuck? Why don't you know any of this? And the kid's just like, I don't know. Like, what?
Like it's just a lot of like, see you in camp, hope you don't suck. And it's like,
all
right, cool.
Me too, man.
When I found out that this was how like a non-insignificant portion of the NHL develops their players, I was like, what? Like a fan assumes that there's so much practicality behind the scenes, and apparently that's not the case for a lot of players. So what Detroit is doing with the Swedish people the former Swedish players over there, developing that bridge and making them comfortable and just like opening up communication between both parties is it's brilliant. There's no reason to not do it.
Well, and they're doing very intentionally with like other prospects as well. They sent more Seider to Rögle, for example. And from what I think I've heard this, and I'm pretty sure I've heard this, but from what I understand, Lucas Raymond was basically living down there in the south of Sweden, just like working with Seider, talking with Seider, just like making sure he's having a good, like it's good for him being there, just making him comfortable. And they had Joe Valeno in Malmö, and in the same area, the Rögle is, and like in the south of Sweden, Henrik Seider lives there as well. So like I think they've just used their players to like, they put their other like North American and German players, like just put them in the south of Sweden, because we got two former players who won the Stanley Cup with us, like just put them there, and then we have them talk and develop. And like looking at someone like Valeno, who during the season just like developed and became very, very good in the SHL after a while, and just Seider just dominating the SHL as well. So I think they're very intentional with what they're doing, and they're using it extremely well.
And that's what's fascinating to me is like, I would just like, the reason I asked that question to begin with is because like it seems very common sense to me, right? Hey, this guy only played for your team. This guy lives right next to one of your prospects. This guy likes to work in hockey. Hire him and make that work for you, like that. So, and in my head, I'm like, well, every team probably has their, alumni over here and there, and they're probably, doing blah, 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 whatever. But it's interesting to kind of hear that that's not necessarily the case across the board. And something I was thinking about a lot this week is that I like the idea of that because it is guided and it's not just, hey, we'll see you at camp, hope you don't suck. It's all of the not hand holding, but assistance throughout the way. And then there's an extra milestone for them to hit. There's okay, you've got this down. Now let's put you into the AHL. The AHL is not necessarily a given. And those are two very different styles of play. I remember when Gustav Lindstrom was kind of breaking into the NHL, one of the things that Jeff Blashill said about him was he is very good at playing European hockey. He can hit that first pass, he can hit the streaking winger coming out of the zone. What we need him to start doing is chipping the puck off glass and, making the tough plays that help you win North American hockey as well. So he kind of has the complete palette to make whatever decision he chooses when the time comes. And I love that as well, that there's kind of Emil Viro is an example of somebody who he's staying with TPS. He's going to continue working on his offensive game, which he did work on last year. It has gotten better. And, he has that extra milestone of, okay, I can do all these things in this. I can play defensively in this league. I'm very comfortable doing that. I think I should be able to hold my own in the AHL, but let's round out this offensive skill set first before we start pounding around down there. And that is not able to be developed in a league like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Oscar Plandowski. I don't know much about him.
I believe he's a hockey player.
Yeah, he is a hockey player.
We're really this is all just building up to us getting to Pasquale Zito.
Yeah.
Who is also a hockey player.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Plandowski's I don't know. I don't think there's much there. I don't really know what I can tell you. I did a few games of him and his results were pretty mediocre to not great. But I mean, I think he's a low ceiling, decent floor guy. Like, I feel like he'll be an AHL guy. I don't really think that there's much to speak to that's really high end, but his brain defensively is in the right place a lot of the time. From what I've seen, he keeps it pretty simple, but he can get physical if he needs to. Like, I don't know. I just get the feeling that they're like, well, if he's a bottom pair guy, then sure. If not, whatever. Like, I think some really good players went undrafted, but Plandowski, I think, is safer than those players in terms of like the hockey mentality of like actually turning into an NHL player. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I just didn't come away thinking that there was much there except for like a strong defensive player, because his offensive game was hard to read, if not kind of not really there consistently at 5-on-5. But I don't know.
I mirror that. I have a sample size of 2. And if I'm being completely honest, some of these lower end players who, when I'm first watching them, if it's in the middle of like a film session where I'm bouncing between a bunch of different players and they're not wowing me the first time, and I'm not really wowed the second time, my ADD sometimes tends to take over and I just kind of zone out.
I get that.
So like, and then I never even bothered to revisit after that. So for everything Will said tracks with what I know in my extremely limited sample, and I can't offer anything else because I watched like a game and a half.
Now, we used the analogy for Pasquale Zito the other day on the show. Scott broke out the Family Guy reference. What was it, Scott? You said it better than I will.
The for
the Pasquale Zito pick.
What did I say?
The episode of Family Guy with the boat in the box.
Oh yeah. Where they go. He goes. Everybody on the street wins. Like, you can either get a free boat or a mystery box, and they go through and every single person, all the neighbors pick the boat because it's a boat, and the box is like this big. And
could be the boat.
Peter,
a boat, but a mystery box could be anything. Even a boat.
Yeah, Peter says the mystery box could be anything though, Lois. Hell, it could even be a boat. And so yeah, that was the analogy we used for him.
So that's Pasquale Zito, and if he hits, I mean, he's got the best name in the draft. Like, sorry, Red Savage, you got a sick name, but
it's very good.
Oh
it
my
is
goodness.
Very good.
I can't even say without doing this with my fingers. It's ridiculous. Like, Now, was this something that, I mean, happened? How much of an occurrence was this during this draft? Because what happened to Pasquale Zito is very unique in that his league was canceled due to a global pandemic, and he didn't get to play any hockey in his draft year. Was not really that impressive in his pre-draft year. I think he had like 13 points in 40-some games, so not really a lot there. And then
13 and 46. Don't do him such a disservice.
13,
Don't do him such an injustice.
Is that something that happened a lot in this draft? Did you see any kind of
yes
picks like that?
There was a lot of picks where I was like, what? Not saying he was one of them, because I at least knew who he was. No, I at least knew who he was.
Oh, I didn't.
I heard his name before when I was looking through OHL rosters, so I could recognize it.
That's good.
At the very least. I can't say I've ever really watched him. Maybe like picked up background shifts or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
This screams like a pick where like one scout is really confident in something, and he was just like, yeah, this is like a lot of 6th and 7th round picks. I feel like go to a scout who did a lot of work, who didn't get their player or their say in the players picked before. And then they're just like, this is your time to shine. Find me that OHL gem. And someone was just like, Zito. Telling you.
He's like, oh, shit.
I don't like it was probably it.
He
might
opened
not
the
be
last
that.
page of the OHL program
Yeah,
and said
Z-I.
that guy.
Yeah, like I don't really know what else to say other than that. Like I saw a guy like who I loved, who part of me knew he was going to go undrafted, but I really didn't want to believe it. It was Marcus Almquist because he's so talented. I don't know whether or not Zito is better than Marcus Almquist. I haven't watched him, and he didn't get a chance to play that this year. But that's why I would have just taken Marcus Almquist, because I know he played this year, and he's really good.
I mean, the thing with drafting those guys, yeah, he is small, very small. But the thing about drafting OHL guys this year the way I kind of treated it was like I went back and looked at their tape from last season, so when they were playing, and said, okay, let's assume that they did not improve, for argument's sake. Where would they be on my list this year if they kept their game the same? And there was a couple that I had ranked, but not a ton. There was a few that I wanted to rank, like Connor Lockhart. Pasquale Zito was not one of them. But but I look at it and go, you know what? Like Dallas taking the first one off the board at 23 in Wyatt Johnston, it's like, I don't really see why, but if Dallas believes, and again, that this is kind of a catch with this year's draft, is like of the guys where they barely played, it's really hard to argue with those picks, even if you think they're ridiculous, because the counter argument could be, well, we believe if he had played a full season, he'd be a first round pick. Or if he had played a full season, Tyler Boucher would be a top 15 pick. And you can sit there, like, to me, I go, okay, but like that's a really big risk to take. Like that's a risk.
Other top 15 picks who played a season.
Yeah, that's a risk.
Yeah,
that's an unforced risk. But I guess if you think of you're using your draft picks like that, then you don't mind that strategy, then go nuts. But I wouldn't. But other teams might just disagree, which is totally cool. But once we got out of the first few rounds of the draft, then yeah, I mean, I'd be much more open to it. Like Toronto taking Ty Voigt, I completely forgot he existed, to be perfectly honest. And then when his name went off the board, I went, oh yeah, like he probably should be gone by now, so that's probably not a terrible pick. But then when a guy like Pasquale Zito goes off, he wasn't even one of the guys that I watched last year to get a gauge on if they should be ranked this year. Like I hadn't heard his name once. So I guess Detroit, maybe what Sam said is what happened, or there's like some connection there with Detroit where they know him or someone knows him and is like, look, he's a hardworking kid. He might not make the team ever, but in development camp, he'll be fun to be around and guys will rally around him and whatever. I don't know. And maybe there's something there that like over the last 365 days, he's been training and training and training and training and training. And there's no way we would be able to know that. And also like when I have heard that said about people who have been off ice this year and they're playing, it's like, okay, so you're going to draft them based off of like their training, which again, for top 2 rounds or top 3 rounds this year, probably wouldn't be my strategy. But if you're at 166, like, again, like I said a few times, like I thought good players went undrafted this year. You know, even guys that did play, like Alexei Malinin largely played in a men's league this year and didn't look terrible. He wasn't great, but he didn't look terrible and he was still on the board. But, you know, if you see something in Pasquale Zito, then good for you, then go for it, you know. But again, you can't really split hairs too much about going at 166, but you can also look at who was on the board and who went off the board by the end of the draft and go, yeah, but, and it's a little bit difficult to square that circle. But then the counter argument is always the same of like, yeah, but we saw this out of him. So who knows when he comes back to Windsor, he might score 120 points next year. Maybe, but yeah, I don't know.
What do you guys make of the outside of the Red Wings? Or actually, we got a couple of listener submitted questions, so we'll hit those, and then I know Scotty wants to get your guys' opinion on the rest of the draft. Thank you so much for your time. We'll make this pretty quick here.
It's all good.
Yeah. So we have a question here from Adam Flett. He said, at a guess, how many prospects that we currently have are debuts this next season, and how many next season? So I don't know if you guys would, are familiar with the pipeline enough to be able to answer this, but
that's outside of like the obvious names like Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider could play NHL hockey next year. Lucas Raymond might stand to benefit a year of utterly dominating the SHL just for the sake of being the guy utterly dominating the SHL and the unique experience that brings you, but he is ready to be an impact player in the NHL and will likely still reach his ceiling all the same because he's Lucas Raymond. And that's the end of that argument. Moritz Seider is definitely NHL ready. Like that, the kid's next step is to come over and to kick ass. And he is going to come over and kick ass. Beyond that, just at a quick glance, like, does anybody...
Let me jump in here real quick about Lucas Raymond, because I think there's a weird thing going on in like the Red Wings fan base right now where like Lucas Raymond is that dude, but also nobody wants to see him in the NHL. Like everybody's like, no, not possible. Nope. AHL. He's going to the AHL first. Like they're so certain of it.
He'll be fine in the NHL. I don't know. He's really good, man. Like he's really good. And like he's really good in the things that you normally want to see developed out of a fourth overall player, like his off puck play, his defensive game, his whole concept of two-way play is exactly what we said earlier. It's just the pressure, the tracking, the puck pursuit. It's just like,
which is what the Red Wings value more than really anything else amongst their forward group.
Yeah, and he's already got it all. Like he's got all of it. Really, and it like complements his offensive game and gives him the chance to consistently create the conditions that he's comfortable with offensively. And when he's in those conditions, he's extremely good at creating dangerous chances. He's really good. I had him third overall. And like I love Lucas Raymond. I could talk about Lucas Raymond to the end of the day. I would have taken him first this year. Like he's NHL ready. Whether or not he could stand to just dominate a league for a year, just for the sake of dominating a league for a year. I mean, it doesn't hurt development. So,
well, the
issue with the SHL is that Frölunda has a team that they have stocked up with a shit ton of forwards this season. So even though how good Lucas Raymond is and how high we all value him, Frölunda is a team that needs to focus on their own development and not the development of a kid that is owned by an NHL team. So I think he would have it tough in the SHL only because of that, not because of his talent, but because the Frölunda would limit his ice time.
That's fair.
And I think just put him in the NHL, play him the 9 games, see how he does, and then you can just move him down to the AHL. And that's give him the 9 games. And I think he will do good. He will do really good. So
and he is coming over next year. I don't know if you guys were aware of that for sure.
The way I see it with him is, I mean, I think Lucas Raymond is an AHLer right now. I don't want to put too much on his shoulders. Like you look at, he only played like 14 and a half minutes a night last year. I'm just looking it up now, and that's not a ton of ice time. And he was a net positive possession player, but like you look at the guys that are a D+1 and that have scored at the same rate that he has. And again, this is very rudimentary, but he's along the lines of like an Isaac Lundestrom, Marcus Davidsson, Mika Zibanejad. I mean, that's a good one, but like Jakob Vrana, Andreas Janssen. So in terms, he's not blowing the doors off of the SHL, and yes, he's playing with Frölunda and like that factors in, but like he's even behind guys like Samuel Fagemo in his draft plus 1 year. Kevin Fiala, Elias Anderson, guys like William Nylander were a point per game in the SHL in their D+1, Nicholas Backstrom as well. So I'm not jumping to conclusions about him right away being an NHL player, but I do think he'll get a cup of coffee, like Mikael said, and you can see how he does. But I think in the AHL, like, you don't want to rush him too much too fast before him being capable of actually being Lucas Raymond in the NHL. So I feel like the AHL makes more sense. But I do think that when I look at the Detroit Red Wings, like Moritz Seider almost certainly, and I believe even Steve Yzerman has confirmed as much, that he'll be an NHL player next year. I think Joe Veleno probably will earn his way into the NHL lineup finally. I think the dark horse that I actually really like is Jonathan Berggren, who is a guy who I think finally has stayed healthy long enough and finally figured out how to project his fast and speedy game sort of into the SHL, and it really paid off this year. He was great, and he was a guy that I was a huge fan of that year in 2018, and I could see him getting not just a cup of coffee, but like earning a job, even as like a third line guy who can chip in offensively, because he is another one of those guys like Nils Höglander who has tons and tons of skill and tons of offense, but also the style of play where it's like you can also trust them to have the talent to play defensively as well. And I think he's finally bringing his game on both sides of the puck up to the level it should be or could be, because he is an extremely talented player, like fundamentally, but just rounding out his game and like getting stronger was important, and staying healthy especially. And now that he's kind of done that, that's a guy where I could see like low key sneaking his way into the NHL and getting a chance. And outside of that, I mean, those are the two guys that jump off the page to me as potential NHL guys. Maybe Gustav Lindstrom cements a depth spot or something.
Jared McIsaac might be able to earn like
he's been hurt a lot.
Spot,
he
that's just a big maybe. And other than that,
poised for a Berggren type year though, because like he got drafted and people were really high on him. Then he got hurt, and then he got hurt again, and then and just kind of he became a guy who just kind of fell behind and was just less favorable in a very similar way to which Berggren did. And then all of a sudden it was the Berggren hype train, just out of nowhere, just was back full force and rolling again.
Yeah, he's played 39 games in 2 seasons. Like, there's no way he's playing in the NHL. There's no way.
Wait, Jared McIsaac's only played 39 games in 2 seasons.
He played 29 in 2019-20 and 11 last year.
Oh,
yeah.
So, and none of them were NHL games. Yeah, he had
surgery.
Wow, his development's a lot further behind than I initially anticipated. Okay, I'm going to take that one back.
Yeah, Berggren's the guy that I think is up there.
I agree that everything else, I think those are like the only players you could reasonably expect. Even with Raymond, I agree he still would be better off like playing in the AHL and just like learning to be the guy driving play like you want him to be as a 4th overall player. I don't think he'd be lost in the NHL. But I don't know. There's no reason just to rush him, I guess.
No.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason to rush him. But I think he's so talented and he plays such a smart, advanced, sophisticated game for a winger that like he's one of the players where you might rush him by putting him in, but I imagine he finds his way regardless, just because he's Lucas Raymond and he's really good at hockey. But like you can't go wrong with a year in the AHL. Like he'll probably have a really, 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 really fun AHL year to watch if he went down there.
He's also like one of these players where he has these intangibles where he goes out in as an underager at the under 18s and just dominates the entire tournament, scoring a hat trick in the final and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like he just thrives when he's pushed to do something. So, and that's very intangibles and very like just like we'll see how it goes. But he has that mentality and just like the head on his shoulders that is going to be. He can just go out there and don't care that it's the NHL and just provide it.
And that's kind of why I have confidence that he'll make the team. Like there was a quote that came out the other day. It was like, do you hope to make the NHL? He said, yes. Otherwise I would be going over there.
Yeah, like, I saw that. And I was just like, God, I love you.
Oh, I got the chills, And I just think like you take a person with his pedigree and like the things that, Hakan Anderson said about him there. I think it was on the Elite Prospects pod or EP Ringside with JD Burke, and he was on there and he was like the Sweden's coach in that tournament after they got COVID, whoever stepped in was like, thank God for Lucas Raymond, because he was my assistant coach for that entire tournament. You know, like you just look at the maturity, and then you look at the fact that the two-way game is kind of at the forefront of what makes him a special player. And I just think for the Red Wings organization, like I said, they value that more than really anything else. And so if he shows up to camp and he is far and away the best two-way player out of Veleno, Berggren, you know, whoever.
Which he probably will be. I think he makes a team. And I think that people right now are kind of, they have this in their head that Berggren's point production is ahead of Raymond. So he's ahead of Raymond in general, which I can't speak to one way or the other. And then they
He's
kind of
2 years
assume
older.
But they kind of assume it'll be one or the other because they have it in their mind that, Giovanni Smith is getting a roster spot next year, which he very well could be, but it's this weird thing right now where it's either Berggren or Raymond, and I don't think that's the case, to be quite honest.
Point production just allows for those. It's very easy to just look at who's scoring more points, going he's closer to being the NHL, but it like there's so many details beyond that. There's so much like nuance to it. I don't know. I mean, I could certainly listen to the argument that Jonathan Berggren's a more effective player. I can't really comment on it too much because I didn't see too much of him this year. I just like him as a hockey player and thought he was hella good when I caught his highlights or something. And I was like, oh, wow, look at that. He really is coming along. But
I mean, finish.
No, that's really all. Like, I just don't really know much about how close Jonathan Berggren is or the details about his game to see how well they currently project, just that he's caught up on his development. But I don't know if I'm ready to make the claim that like he's closer. I not Lucas Raymond. I would not be
like, if anything,
I would still gamble
like,
on him being a more effective NHL player, like Raymond being a more effective NHL player next year.
And I feel like because the maybe most attractive part of Berggren's game is like the offense, and he just got done playing in the SHL with this big ice surface. He's a guy who likes to play on the perimeter. You know, I wonder if there's a kind of obvious advantage to him going to the AHL to kind of see if that style of game still works, and then just kind of mold his game from there on North American ice. Like I feel like that is probably better for him than Raymond ultimately.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, that's the I'm just looking at Detroit's cap friendly page, and there's 10. There's
it's
10,
friendly.
Yeah,
it's friendly, all right.
There's 10 contract slots allotted to forwards now, and that includes Filip Zadina. So, and judging by that, I mean, I could see all these guys playing in the NHL. Like one of them is Jakub Vrana, Adam Ernie. I guess you could see him in the NHL. Mitchell Stevens, but like you could see a guy like Lucas Raymond. Like at least two forward slots open. And to me, if the names that are on the board there is Veleno, Raymond, Berggren, and like Taro Hirose, Riley Barber, like those guys to me are guys that there could be a legitimate, competition there. But I also think that all three of those guys could work their way onto the roster anyway. And we're just talking about splitting hairs here. And they all just make it because they have to beat out Adam Ernie for a job. Who's like, he's okay, like as a role player and like depth guy, but he could probably
be leading scorer last year until
Jakub
Vrana got on the team.
Was he seriously?
He was until we traded for Vrana. He was the leading goal scorer on the team. Yes.
Oh my God in heaven.
Ouch.
I'm pretty sure he ended the season as the most.
Like, if you guys want any sort of idea as to what we've been going through over these last couple of years, it's been Adam Ernie leading the Red Wings in scoring.
He had
at a very distant point.
He had as many goals as Anthony Mantha. What the hell?
Sure did.
What happened?
Sure did.
Oh my God.
What is happening?
All right,
how did
everything
Montreal get swept by the Red Wings 2 years ago?
And we will never let you forget it.
No, you shouldn't. Just like I'm never going to let Will forget that the Habs came back off a 3-1 deficit of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I won't forget either. Don't worry. Yeah, I mean, like,
funny, like people argue that if like they should put Giovanni Smith ahead of Lucas Raymond. Like Lucas Raymond is for the top two lines.
Yeah,
he's gonna play. He's gonna play with Dylan Larkin or like Jakub Vrana or Filip Zadina. He's gonna play with one of those. Giovanni Smith is not gonna fight for those positions. It's two different spots, and like
I think it's just a matter of who are you taking out, you know, because
Franz Nielsen.
Yeah, well, we're gonna take him out, all right. Whoa. Hopefully a cap buyout. I don't know.
Pancakes are good.
Yeah, a little too good. Yeah. So I don't know. We got another question here. This one comes to us from DRW. Got next.
Okay.
When is the fastest time Cossa can be a legit goalie from this team? Is it a 5-year development situation, or will he be like Carter Hart? I know there's no way of knowing, but typically when you draft a goalie this high, is there an ideal timeline?
I mean, look at what happened to Carter Hart, though.
Yeah.
You know, stick him in the NHL when he's 20 and just blast him full of minutes, and good luck, you know? I don't know. I mean, Sebastian Cossa, the good thing about him that is a check mark for me is his track record. He's been like a 920 goalie at least every single year since he was like 12. So to me, that means that you can expect that to sustain itself, I guess. I don't expect him in the NHL. Like, the last player that I draft that I would ever pressure is a goaltender to make the NHL. It's like if I had my way, the NHL goaltenders on my team I would never know who's going to start in net for my team unless I have someone for sure that I can bank on. And so for him, could it be 2 years from now? Maybe. I could see him being like a 2 or 3, like 3 years from now, and maybe at 21, they play him in the AHL and he's still a rock star. Like, I'm always a fan of playing cautious with developing prospects. Like, bring them along one step at a time. Like, don't skip a level unless you absolutely think like that, you know, you've got something there. Like, the NHL, to me, I don't know if any of you agree with me on this, whether you're Sam, Michael, Mikael, or whoever. It's like the NHL is in a league of its own, literally. Like, it's
not a development league.
No, it is so hard now. Like, again, we just saw Alexei Lafreniere score at like a 20-point pace or 25-point pace after scoring at 150-point pace last year.
They're so good in the QMJHL.
So you have a guy coming in who's like a hot shot World Junior Championship, you know, thing. You know, think of it's so easy to come into the NHL and be not overrated but overmatched, and the last thing you want is your young goaltender doing that. And even if they get off to a bit of a hot start, like, you never know. And so to me, with prospect development, I always think about it as like, all right, let's bring the guy along until they're not just comfortable in the league we drafted them from, but like high end. And then, okay, let's move them up a little bit and then play patiently with that step and bring them into the American Hockey League, or if it is the NCAA, see how they play in the NCAA, and then bring them over to the American League after that. And then from there, you kind of go from there. But again, it can be so hard. It can also come down to so much to the individual. If I, you know, I just don't know. And it's so hard to know from an outsider's perspective, because it also just depends on like, how much do the coaches trust him? And I don't even know who's going to be coaching Detroit when Sebastian Cossa comes around and is ready to play, right? Like, there's so much uncertainty. And I think it's just like, I don't know, you just might have to have a patchwork of goaltenders for a couple of years who aren't bad. And then, or you have Nedeljkovic. And then when Kossa's ready, you kind of dump him in. Yeah, you got him for nothing. So I don't know is the short answer to that question. And I don't think anybody does for sure.
Well, and to go off of that point real quick, it just kind of reminds me of playing quarterback in the NFL. Like, to the Carter Hart, you know, when he comes in originally, he's almost too dumb to know what he doesn't know. And you see that with a lot of quarterbacks. Like, they get thrown in there out of nowhere and they're just like running around making plays. They're too inexperienced to realize that they shouldn't be breaking out of the pocket, slinging the ball downfield. And sometimes I feel like you might see that with a goaltender, and then all of a sudden you get hit from the blind side one time, and then you can't drop back in the pocket without feeling that pressure, and then that messes up everything you are as a player and everything you are as a competitor at that position too.
Yeah, that's certainly.
And if you're not equipped to deal with that mentally, like it doesn't look like Carter Hart was, you do have that dramatic kind of, oh no, I'm supposed to be Carter Hart, you know, and that, I think that's kind of plays into it too, is the expectations of oh no, everybody thinks I'm going to be really good and I suck right now. And there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, all I will say on the Cossa thing is just like, you do not want to put someone in that situation, like you just said, during the development path. Like, if Cossa makes it to the NHL because it's like the next step and he still manages to like slip up and get in his head, that's one thing. But if you do it early, you are opening up a realm of possibilities that likely do more harm than good for no reason other than you wanted to say you brought him in the NHL after 3 years. Like, I don't know. You have a good goalie right now. There's no reason to rush this. Let this take as long as it needs. If it takes 5 years, then it takes 5 friggin' years.
Right. And that's the thing, like the timing of now the current goalie situation we have and the age of everyone is enough where if he figures it out quickly and does get rushed, that works. And also if it takes 5 years for him to develop, that works.
Yeah,
like
it's a perfect situation for him.
right.
So just let it take as long as it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like he can advantages to rushing this.
Right. He can be a 20-year-old backup, or he can be a 23, even 24-year-old starter like 6 years from now. Like, it's okay no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this question comes from me. What can we reasonably expect out of Moritz Seider at the NHL level next year? Because Steve Yzerman came out and I think he put a little bit of a nervous tick into a lot of people's throats. He said, if Moritz Seider is not in the top 6, he's not going to watch from the press box. And I'm pretty sure that's a smokescreen because let's be real. Detroit's top 6 is not good. But what do you think we can reasonably expect?
He's not going to carry your defense next year. He's not going to like turn out to be the star everyone wants him to be immediately. He's going to probably take a couple of years, but like he's going to be an impact player, I think, right away. Like how big of an impact that is kind of hard to say, especially because I don't know what role Detroit's going to use him in. But I don't know. I don't think he's going to be a negative asset out there at all. Like he's just going to be like a solid hockey player who has the room to be a damn really good one. Like I feel like a lot of prospects just have unreasonable expectations of what their ceilings are supposed to be versus what their impact is going to be right away because they have top prospect status. Like out of 100 players, maybe 5 are actually ready. Mm-hmm. Like if you opened up, just making this up as I go along, say you opened up elite prospects, like top 100 affiliated prospects, every single fan wants their prospects to be like impact players the way they read in the descriptions that describe their play styles without actually knowing how hard it is to adjust to the NHL. Mm-hmm. It's going to take some time. Doesn't matter who you are. Like they're Matthews, McDavid, and Eichel are the 3 who can like get drafted and come over and be amazing. And then there's the occasion like Pettersson and Makar can be developed for a couple of years and come over and rock those show from the second they step on the ice. But that's so rare. It's so hard.
But it's also been 2 full years now for Mo Seider playing in 2 very different leagues.
But none of them were spent in the NHL. So that adjustment period can still and likely will exist. Mm-hmm. Or he is part of that like top 5%, like 97th percentile behemoth of a hockey player who can just jump into the NHL and be a high impact right away. But I'm with Yzerman's method of like just tempering expectations just on the off chance of like, I don't know. There's no benefit to play like in your head focusing in on the fact that he is a top 4 defenseman right now and he will be for the foreseeable future. And if he's anything less, he's disappointing us and overhyped and this and that. Like, just don't do that. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Every year that discourse happens, and then 2 years later, half of those kids become really good players, and they're just like, "Well, this is why you shouldn't judge rookies." And then they turn around and judge the next bunch.
Someone has Alex Romanov on their favorite team.
Well, this is part of it. It's just like, man, I watched the Romanov hype train go on for years. I'm like, okay, guys, I've watched them. Whatever you're talking about right now is not Alexander Romanov. Okay.
I think I agree with everything Sam said. I also think that Seider is probably the main favorite for the Calder. I can't think of anyone else.
Caulfield.
Oh yeah, Cole Caulfield maybe.
Cole Caulfield
He's
is
too
going to
small.
get killed by Moritz Seider.
Yeah,
It's gonna run
Sadly.
into the bottom.
We'll see.
sadly.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Just a little smack, little
No,
trash
but Cole
talk,
Caulfield
you
is
know?
of course a Calder favorite. But I think like Moritz Seider is one of the, I don't know, what is it, like 5-6 players maybe that can win
Yeah,
it this year.
absolutely.
What I see right now. So like that could be fun for you. I don't know, like the way I've understood that Jeff Blasel had the team playing last year wasn't. It was just defend, and hope for the best and win 1-0, and or like 2-0 with a Phil Bronick open net goal maybe. But otherwise, I feel like it's. So it depends on how he's going to be utilized, because if they're going to play like just defend, he's not going to get that much.
It sounds like he's going to be with Nick Leddy.
Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
then he's going to
I
have
think
to
that's
take care
the
of.
assumption.
He's going to have to play for 2 defensemen.
I'll give my take on Moritz Seider, because like he's a guy that was a good lesson for me when I was sort of doing this earlier in my life. Mostly because the only time I saw him was at the World Juniors, and that was the Division 1A tournament. So I was like, oh yeah, like he looks like a great defenseman here, but like who doesn't? That is a first round pick in the NHL because it's Division 1A. But what I've definitely learned, especially watching him in the SHL last year, is like I don't think you're going to get the offense out of Moritz Seider that people seem to think you're going to get. Like obviously 22 points in 49 AHL games at 18 years old, that's impressive. But I think that's like he might be that 30-point NHL defenseman who has like tremendous analytics. Like I've watched him a lot in the SHL this year, and that's a big reason why I don't think he's going to win the Calder, even if he does have a really good year. Like to be a defenseman and win the Calder, you have to be
a point producer.
Yeah, you have to be measurably good, and everybody has to be talking about you all year long, and you have to be on highlight reels, I think, and really make it apparent that you are the guy on defense. But I don't think he's that type of player. Like every time I've seen him in the SHL, he's just doing the right thing all of the time. Like he is mobile enough combined with his size to pretty much get where he needs to be on the ice at the right time. And his defensive abilities are multi-layered and really well refined. And if need be, he can throw you to the ice, but it's not his first instinct to do so. It's just that he can. And when he does have the puck, again, he's not the most skilled dude, but he knows how to make a pass. He knows how to move the puck around and open up passing lanes and fake guys out. Like he has a little bit of that to his game. It's just not, he doesn't have the dynamic ability of someone like a Quinn Hughes or a Cale Makar where they'll be out there making points all day. But to me, it's more about him. I think he'll step into the NHL, and the fact that he's going to play with Nick Leddy makes a lot of sense to me. Like just you go out there, and that's a good way to support a defenseman who can play a little bit more offensively. You adjust carefully to the NHL level. There's no real pressure to dominate in the NHL right away. So just chill out, like play your game. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but just like stick to your guns and do your thing. Because defensively is where he's most sound to me. And then turning the game around and moving it offensively, he's also pretty good at it. It's just once the puck is in the offensive zone, he does score points, but it's not necessarily what I'd call a hallmark of his game. Like he's not stepping up from the blue line and sending cross ice passes and doing all that stuff a whole lot when I see him. It's more just working the blue line and covering the offensive zone breakouts. So I think that he'll be a guy where real serious fans of hockey, like people who watch the minutia and pay attention, will really like him. Because he's just always in the right place at the right time and effective. Like he's just really, really, really effective. And that's great. But in terms of like what to expect from him, like I don't think he's going to step into the NHL, score 60 points and win a Norris Trophy in his first year at all. But I do think that what Steve Yzerman hit on was similar. It's a similar echo to Simon Edvinsson, like where there isn't like the point production is okay, like it was for Edvinsson, like being a half a point per game in the Allsvenskan for a defenseman is okay. But what you're looking at is the defensive refinement and the ability to just make the right defensive play and have it happen in a way that you think is projectable, which is like leading with your stick, using your mobility to sort of push guys to the outside or to the inside to put them out of their comfort zone, and if you need to, throw them to the ice and, get involved in physical play. And Seider does that as well. So it seems like Steve Yzerman really, really values those type of defensemen, because of course you should, right? Like you should have some guys that can play like that. And I think that's what he could step in and do right away. But in terms of turning the game around offensively at the NHL level is where there might be a little bit more question marks, and then actually producing points. But I have no concerns about him being, at the very least, like a capable second pair defenseman, maybe, who can, plug the hole defensively and get the puck to Nick Leddy, who can kind of move it up the ice a little bit better. So we'll see what happens. I think there's still a really, really, really high ceiling with him, but in terms of just into the NHL, we'll see. But I'm not super concerned.
The one thing I would say about I'll be curious to see how much of a highlight reel darling he does end up being, because when he tosses people, like it's highlight reel inducing physicality. And
after the season we just had,
yeah. And I'll be curious to see how much that helps him along, it's just been a while as a Red Wings fan, just looking to feel something, just looking for some recognition on the primary NHL Twitter account, tweet out a highlight every now and then. Sure. And I wonder if because he really just does things to people that you just don't see. And he tossed Troy Stetcher in the World Championships, like made him look like a child. Bitch, get off me. And I'll be curious to see in the NHL if that does maybe get people like, hey, this kid's kind of fun, especially with the fact that nothing else really that exciting is happening around the Red Wings right now, especially if Lucas Raymond doesn't make the team and,
Philip Zadina
they don't offer Sheep Pedersen. Yep, that's true. I wish. What do you guys make of Philip Zadina's 2 seasons after, or 3 seasons after? Right? 2, 3?
That he probably wasn't the consensus third overall that half of the hockey community thought he was, including myself, because I was very mad when Kotkaniemi was selected. Even though I liked Kotkaniemi, I was just like, Zadina's a consensus third overall, Berggren. You aren't good enough at this. I think I can call him out for a lot of other stuff. That was not one of them. I would take Kotkaniemi over Zadina. I don't think Philip Zadina's a bad player though. Like at 6 overall, I think that was a great pick.
Yeah, the thing is right now is that he kind of came in and the expectation was he was this like point, producer and power play slap shot specialist and all these types of things. And then what happened, you had the first year, he was in the AHL, played a handful of games, had his first really kind of, hey, here you are in the NHL season cut short. And then, with this past season, he didn't put up a lot of points, but we did see a lot of like really good things out of Philip Zadina's game. Like he was really good, checking in the offensive zone, good on the back check, just like played a really, really, really good 2-way game. And, never got off the first line, there was never a despite the fact that he wasn't really producing, there was never an inclination that he's not doing enough. We got to get him out of here, because I think that they were so pleased with the way that he was defending and trying to make plays that they were like, okay, the scoring will come eventually. Like it's on its way. And if you have all these things, then you're going to be a complete hockey player in the long run anyway. So just kind of keep working on that.
I think all of that is completely fair. It's just another example of the NHL is the best hockey league in the world by a ridiculously large margin. And it's really hard to play there. Doesn't matter how gifted of a teenager you are. It is really hard to play at the NHL. So Zadina, and the same can be said for Kotkaniemi and other players in the 2018-19 range, where it's just like, they'll be fine. They'll be good players. You can see like the cracks in the foundations of who they're going to be forming now, like Zadina being that high effort winger everywhere, all 3 zones. The shot is great. Like the passing is great. Could stand to be more deceptive, I guess, since that I didn't watch too much of him, but when I did see him, I was like, he saw the passing lane, but the defender didn't bite, so he never got it through. So working on those types of details will open up opportunities, and that just takes time because the NHL is really hard.
It is.
NHL defensemen are incredibly smart and know what you're going to do and will preemptively just do everything they can to stop you from doing it. You need to be able to manipulate them out of the way so you can do what you want to do. That is really, really hard. And a lot of rookies struggle like actually manipulating them. Like, well, normally this would work. And I would get them, oh, that guy didn't move. Why is he still there? Now the play's dead.
Well, especially with the Red Wings offensive posture too. Like it's just not very, prestigious.
Well, the thing about Zadina for me is like I liked him a lot when he was draft eligible, but he's a pretty prototypical case of like a really talented straight line offense only guy that you needed balance in his game more than there was. And I think the big thing with him is that if he had ice and space to play with, then yeah, you could see the talent. It was all there. There's skill and quickness, and he can shoot the crap out of a puck, and he's a decent playmaker. But under pressure, and when it came time for him to apply pressure, that's when things kind of got a little bit tougher, and he can struggle to, like, he's getting a ton of offensive zone starts this year, and he's still not the best possession player really out there. And he's been playing with like Dylan Larkin. So to me, it's like there's been steps in his game that were kind of necessary to really maximize what he can do, but he's also been ping-ponged around a lot to multiple different teams. He's been, and I think that he's still very young. Like, and at the same time, I mean, I'm looking at the 2018 draft, and yes, he was pretty much a lock top 3 at the time. And the Kotkaniemi and Brady Tkachuk picks were a little strange at the time, but both of those guys have played twice as many games as Filip Zadina has in his career. And they have been consistently NHL players since they were drafted, and Zadina certainly has not. And in between Tkachuk and Zadina is Barrett Hayton, who is, we all know what's going on there.
Yep.
And the only player you could realistically say was a better option, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, is Quinn Hughes. Like Adam Boqvist, he's already been traded.
Yep.
Vitaly Kravtsov, Rangers fans hype him up, and he has not worked out. Evan Bouchard is a flawed player, but he could be really, really talented, but he's just still pretty flawed.
Noah Dobson is really good.
Yeah, Noah Dobson, but again, he's played 80 games and Zadina's played 86. Like, Dobson's also been benched quite a bit. Like, Wallstrom and Oliver Wallstrom, like, underwhelming already. Like, I've watched a lot of Oliver Wallstrom games, and he's kind of, So with Filip Zadina, I'm not super concerned. I think the big thing for me and guys like him is always getting stronger, because guys, if you are those offense skill guys, you'll get targeted, and you have to be able to problem solve under that pressure. And that was the thing that with him I kind of questioned when he was draft eligible, but I figured, okay, like he'll just learn and figure it out. But I didn't figure that meant he'll play 3 games in the AHL and then a game in the NHL and then 3 more games in the AHL, and then we'll send him to the Czech Republic and then send him here and then send him here and then call him up and send him down. It's like, just put him in the AHL. He wasn't even that great in the AHL. Just let him play. But again, it might be also that thing where he, I think, might have been the only guy from the Czech Republic, and he was probably the only 18, 19-year-old there. So you probably also ran a bit of a risk there. So maybe sending him back to Halifax for a year might have made more sense. But I don't know. That's the benefit of hindsight. But with Zadina, I was kind of surprised that he slipped a little bit in that draft, but I also look at who else was available or who else went around 6, and I'm going, well, like, not a bunch of other guys in that range are really NHL impact players yet anyway. And I think that people can get carried away. Like, people do this in Toronto all the time with like Timothy Liljegren. Like, he's been in the AHL since he was drafted, and everyone's thinking like, well, now's time to put up or shut up with him. And it's like, well, he's 21. Like, he's 21. Like, what do you mean put up or shut up?
And crack a cup contending roster.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, you'd think, but like, that's the whole thing, right? So you can't, when guys jump into the pro leagues in North America, it's like a clock starts ticking for a lot of fans, and that clock doesn't exist if that player's playing in Sweden or playing in the Czech Republic or playing in the OHL. They just don't care. It's like, that's where they belong. But if they're in pro, then they're right in your backyard, and they could be called up at any time, but they're just not. And now we're 4 years later, and it's like, well, what's going to happen with this guy? And it's like, well, what is Timothy Liljegren going to like take Zach Bogosian's spot? Like, probably not. Like, when do they give him a chance? I don't know, but they feel like he hasn't earned one yet. Like, you don't want to tinker around with your defense and screw that up. But Zadina, I guess, is more plug and play. He's just, you put him with some skilled forwards and see what he can cook up, and he just blasts bombs from the right shot or right faceoff dot on a power play. So sure, like, that's great. I'm not super concerned, because especially when you look at the cohort around him, and you watch, even when you think about Brady Tkachuk and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, especially Tkachuk, you could tell when he was playing, like when he was draft eligible, I thought, okay, this guy's going to be an NHL player. Like, I don't know what he's going to be, but he's going to be an NHL player, and he's going to be like an annoying, hard-nosed guy that's great around the net. But I just wonder how much of an impact that is around the whole game. And with Zadina, I thought there's a guy who can absolutely fill the net with points, but he does have some flaws that's going to need to be worked out. And I will always lean towards the guys that will fill the net with goals. But with Tkachuk, like, he got first line minutes in Ottawa pretty much right away, and he's like that annoying, rambunctious guy around the net who gets the greasy stuff going, and that's easily projectable. But if Zadina does hit, like if he has a really good season this year when Detroit has, it could be anyone. He might be paired with Sam Gagner, and Sam Gagner might just get him the puck in situations where it's much easier for him to score.
Mhm.
For all we know, Zadina could be a 30 goal scorer next year because he has the talent, I think, to do so, but it's still a question mark. So I'm not super concerned, but I hope he works out.
And I think to that point,
also got. Oh, sorry. I just want to say the fan bases got their minds just rewarped after the 2015 draft, where you had guys like Matthew Barzal after 2 years coming in and scoring 85 points or whatever he did in his rookie year, and you had Mikko Rantanen after 2 or 3 years scoring like 96 points, and you had and of course like those who scored and played early scored a lot of points. But so I think that draft was so good, and now everyone compares it to that and the players in that draft, and that's a tough thing to do towards these kids, because that draft was exceptional and the players in that draft was exceptional. So I think it's just like everyone needs to reset their mindset and then go into everything with a new look on prospects, because not everyone's going to score 85 points 2 years after they get drafted.
well, and to Will's kind of point about him being a power play spot, like one of the areas he's going to make his money in this league is ripping those one-timers from this face-off dot on the power play. The Red Wings power play last year was dog shit, and that is being nice. Like the setup, like everything about it was so broken, and it's not like he was necessarily being straight up set up to fail, but like he just wasn't getting the kind of opportunities that I think were conducive to him converting. And there was a lot of times where he would get that pass, and in my head I was just like, man, when he gets that shot figured out, it's going to be something. But also what comes alongside that is getting the goalie moving from side to side, the rest of the players on the ice, having an impact on how open he is when he gets that shot. And so like there's a lot more to it, I think, that goes into it. And if you look at his shooting percentage this year, I think it was like 6.2% or something like that. Like it was just not good. And I think it's interesting to kind of figure out the whys to that, maybe, and how much is his fault, how much is him being on a power play that one of the worst this league has ever seen, one of the worst special teams, around. So I just think there's so much at play with him that people want him to be really good because they see him as like the next like electric player on this team. And so I think that's frustrating to people when it really shouldn't be, although I get it.
Yeah.
It's just a time-consuming process, and people don't want it to be.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, and I get it, but like that doesn't change the facts. It is a time-consuming process. If you want it done right, it takes time.
Last question here from Irby the Corsi God at Big Mo Seider.
I think I like this one.
What does Berggren need to do in order to effectively translate his game from the outside of the offensive zone to the inside, and how likely is it that this skill set allows him to translate his play that way?
It all comes down to the deception thing I mentioned earlier. Yeah. It's like NHL defenders don't just do what you want them to because you can throw out a couple of feints, or you can change your direction really quick, or you can bait their stick out with some crafty puck handling and then quickly maneuver by them. Like, they're smart enough to, even if they fall for the first like layer of your trap, they're still going to realize what your intentions are, cover their mistake, and take away your space. All getting from the outside to the inside is just learning how to move east to west with control while still being able to identify your options. And I think he has the skill set to do that. It's just, it all comes down to how well he can manipulate defenders at the NHL level and kind of hard to predict how he's going to do until you kind of see him doing it, and you can see what needs to work on and what can't be worked on. It's kind of just too hard to tell right now.
I think Mikael can step in and tell me I'm wrong, but I feel like when I've watched Berggren last year, a big thing with him was like, I mean, yes, you want him working inside, but he's such a great perimeter puck possession player. Like, he's so shifty and so crafty. And, you know, if it means like, if the game plan is just Berggren gets the dump and chase going, someone else is in there for the retrieval, and you send Mike Rasmussen to the net and, you know, hope you can get the puck back to Berggren along the boards and just give him some momentum along, like, especially down low below the goal line. And like, part of it, yes, like Sam said, with defensemen, if you want to get from the boards inside, you have to be creative and deceptive and feint them off and fake one way, go another, whatever. But you're not just going to like pull pucks between defenders' legs and like make them look stupid every night. That's just not how it works in the NHL.
No.
So for him, I think that to me, I don't really see a problem with him being more of that sort of perimeter skill player and being more of a playmaker off the boards. But he does have, like, if he doesn't have the puck, he has the shiftiness and quickness to play like a give and go, and, you know, maybe get the puck. Maybe he isn't the primary entry candidate, but instead he ships the puck to someone else, and then with a couple of strides, he just doesn't even need to fake a defenseman out. He just beats them to the inside without the puck anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's about deployment, I think, with a lot of guys and letting them succeed. So I think with Berggren, he's always, to me, been at his best outside the middle of the ice, which to some people is a really big negative. And I think that might be why he went 33rd overall. But to me, I see it as like, well, you want guys using the boards to their advantage. You want guys who can work off the boards. You want that player who can be deceptive along the boards as well and make a play along the boards when you're least expecting it, especially if where he's so good is down low. Like, passes coming from down low out in front can be very, very difficult to stop. So I don't really see a big issue with Berggren as he is now, and at least trying. But again, the big thing as well, to Sam's point, is resilience under pressure as well, is a big thing that can make life easy for him. Like, one thing about a player this year in the draft, like Matthew Coronado, who's 5'10", that I really, really liked, was his ability to play under pressure and just sort of bulldoze his way through defensemen. Now, was that projectable to the NHL? Maybe, but I like to see it, and I like to see young players playing that way, because that's what they're going to face in the NHL, especially if they're 5'10", sort of skilled offensive guys. So when I look at Berggren, I didn't really see a ton of that right now, but I also see enough speed and skill where he might be able to be fast and crafty enough with his hands to just get a step on an opposing defenseman, maybe not even cut inside, but get a step and make a little passing lane, and boom, he can send a pass out in front, and maybe some oaf like Mike Rasmussen is there for a tip in. You never know. And it might just work. So I'll be very curious to see how it goes for him. I'm not like putting my foot down and saying he'll make it to the NHL, but I mean, it's possible this year. And if it is, then I could see a variety of situations for him working out. But he is one of those guys where there could be things that hold him back just because he's small and not the strongest guy on his feet. But there still is lots and lots of potential.
And just adding on to what he said, playing around the perimeter, like he said about perimeter guys being useful players, it is true. You can't just, dangerous plays happen in the middle of the ice, but there's a misconception on how the puck actually gets to the middle of the ice with space to make a dangerous play. And a lot of that is by drawing out the defense to the perimeter. So guys like Jonathan Berggren, who can make the plays around the drawn out defense and then facilitate inside, still have value. I mean, look at what Tampa Bay did. So much of Tampa Bay's work comes from just navigating the perimeter beautifully, identifying when the defensive coverage is falling apart, and then just collapsing into that open space in the center and just, I don't know, troubleshooting their way through at that point. I actually haven't looked at Tampa's system in depth, but the point is perimeter play is still going to be very important. It's just how you make chances out of it is changing. And Berggren is the type of perimeter player who kind of fits the direction of where it's going.
Interesting.
I don't have much to add because they both Will and Sam nailed it. But the thing that I like with Berggren is he has adopted and developed his play every year that he's been a senior player basically. That he's played in the SHL. He started in the SHL and then he got injured, but like this season he played third line minutes this season. Yeah, he was on power play 1, but he played third line minutes, scoring a point per game in the SHL. That's pretty good from him. And then also like looking at him playing internationally against KHL defenders, against like Liga defenders, and like just playing against different opposition, the best of the best in Europe, basically. And he adapted to them as well, changed up his game so he could score points there as well. And he was basically one of the MVPs for the Sweden in the Euro Hockey Tour a year. Not that is like wildly impressive, but it's still something that he's shown that he can adapt and develop his play depending on where and who is facing. So I think his play is going to go really, like he's going to develop really well in the NHL as well.
There was that like infographic that was, I don't know if it was an infographic, but it was like a screen cap from an SHL game. It was like Jonathan Berggren, 5th all-time points in the SHL amongst junior players, behind the Sedin twins, Pettersson and Zetterberg or something like that. And that was just, and it's you know, and you see those things and you're like, whew. But then it's important to contextualize those things as well.
Yes,
the hype train is very, very real for him right now.
Also, yeah, and big ice is an advantage for guys like him too.
Yeah.
And this is the last thing I'll say is like guys like him on big ice, they can, you know, they have a lot more room to play with, and he's a nice guy when he has room to play with. He can be a ton of fun to watch. So that's the big thing as well. The difference between North American and European hockey is there's just more space to play with, and if you have guys who are fast and skilled, they can play a lot better or play a lot more their way, I guess.
Scotty, anything else from you before we bid farewell?
I don't have anything else Red Wings related, but I really just wanted to know everybody's favorite draft class, like top to bottom. If you had one team
in this year's draft,
yeah. If you had one team that was like, this is my favorite.
Also, what's your favorite draft class ever in terms of year as a whole?
2015,
1983. I don't know. I'm just pulling that out of my ass.
That was nice. That was a good pander pick. Steve Eisman.
That was good.
Honestly, I was a huge fan of the 1594 draft class. I thought there was a lot of Hall of Fame talent that just kind of got lost in the history books.
My favorite draft class was the one where they didn't have a draft class. They just basically held the guy at gunpoint until he was ready to retire and said, "You can't leave our organization."
There you go.
To answer the question seriously,
shout out Ted Lindsay.
Be professional. Yeah, Ted Lindsay. To be professionals about this because we're all adults.
Yeah.
I thought Columbus smacked the draft.
Columbus killed it.
Yeah. Ken Johnson at 5. Like everybody can laugh about Yegor Chinakhov as much as they want, but the idea of Ken Johnson sending pucks to Yegor Chinakhov is hilarious. Cole Sillinger at 12.
The idea of Ken Johnson sending Cole Sillinger pucks is even more hilarious.
Also,
Cole Sillinger is one of the nuttiest shooters I've ever seen.
He is a great shooter. Kuhlmans and Svozil, like I'm not a huge Kuhlmans guy, but when you've got Sillinger and Johnson off the board already, go nuts. It's more skill and good shot. Svozil, nice blank canvas. He fell way too far because his international tournaments were poop. But you got him in the 3rd round, so good for them. And the rest of them, like, I don't really care. I thought Malatesta and Rishavi are pretty decent offensive bets. And Makarov and Rich Richard are guys who I think show interesting defensive traits, but maybe not much of a needle mover. Like Makarov is big and he can move, which is kind of the theme of this year's draft for these shots in the dark that teams were taking. And I don't really have that many thoughts on Ben Boyd, but I thought top to bottom with regards to like drafting value and drafting potential and just picking guys who were sliding. Columbus could have added at least 4 NHL players in their draft with their 3 firsts, but 3 firsts and a 3rd round pick, I think all become NHL players. And I think there's an outside shot for guys like Makarov, Malatesta, Rishavi, and Richard, like someone in that group turning into something. I thought Carolina in terms of asset management did really well, but in terms of actually drafting players, I get the feeling that Columbus pulled a lot out of this draft, and Dallas might be a close second.
Dallas did really well. Carolina did amazing. Carolina took 3 really, really good players. 2 of them I had as firsts and one of them as an early second with 3 second-round picks, which was just brilliance. Shout out to the Islanders with the steal of the draft with Atu at 54. That is utterly ridiculous. That is why.
Which, if there's a system that can fix him, it's them, right? Like,
Well, we'll see.
There's a lot of systems that can fix him because I don't think he needs nearly as much fixing as some narrative is going around saying he does. Like, man, Atu is a hell of a hockey player. Like, he's really good. The inconsistencies that people are harping on, I'm just like, hey, if you apply that logic, then a lot of your favorite prospects are about to go down. Like, he's more of an extreme example, but inconsistency exists for many different reasons when you're dealing with teenagers. And if they can bounce back and play really well, which he did in his second half, he was amazing. I don't know. They overthought it like crazy. Islanders were just smart and picked up a lottery talent with the 54th pick, who is currently annihilating the World Junior Summer Showcase, which doesn't mean much. Doesn't really mean anything.
Nothing.
Actually, yeah, it means nothing. But like, he looks good.
Yeah.
He looks really good.
Yeah. What do you got, Mikael?
Yeah, my favorite draft was the San Jose Sharks because they picked the best player in the draft.
San Jose did good.
The
LA.
And they also picked I also like the Ethan Cardwell was a nice pickup. Theo Jakobsson in his 6th round is fun.
Ben Gaudreau in the 3rd was solid.
Yeah, and like just getting to me, that's going to be the best player in this draft. Getting in at 7 when 7 overall is just easy, and they won the war against you, I guess, since you had the William Eklund war for about a few months before.
They did, but we believe in Steve. So as soon as they pass on Eklund, I'm like, Eklund's trash.
Yeah, he's dead to me.
Thank God, you know.
I thought the Los Angeles Kings had a really, really, really good draft too. Like, I thought the Kings for only having 4 picks, they walked out with really quickly going to check this. Brant Clark, Francisco Pinelli. Who else did they get?
What a great successor to Drew Doughty.
Hellenius and Kirsanov are solid picks later on, I guess, actually. But I thought Clark and Pinelli was just a really, really good top 2 to go with. Pinelli at 42 is a great pick.
The Stars, somebody mentioned them. I thought they absolutely
stank.
Who else did they get? They got Coronado and Stankoven.
No, they got Wyatt Johnston.
Stankoven, Artur Martino.
Martino.
Oh, Krishnikov.
Well, and they got a pretty good haul back from Detroit
Got the haul
trading
from
up 7 picks.
Yep. And they also drafted Justin Ertl, who I don't know anything about, but Josh Mallory told me that he is really, really talented and has a lot of development opportunity to become quite a player. So I'm just going to take his word for it because he's really good at this and say that was a decent pick.
All right. Well, we are 3 hours in, or almost 3 full hours into Prospects and Pancakes. This was a wonderful, wonderful time. I cannot even begin to describe how thankful we are to have you guys spend your Saturday afternoon with us. This is a Sunday. Wonderful time. Would you guys like to plug anything? So this is going to be the debut of our YouTube channel for the Locked On Red Wings podcast. So I'm going to do that thing and be like, if you want to check out Will's content, click here.
Oh, okay.
I don't have content, so just link Will. I don't know.
Yeah, so you go ahead and hype your content, and I'll put it right here, and I'm just gonna stand here while you talk about it, and it's gonna be like like a game show when you come out, and like this is your prize. So, what would you like to hype, Will? We're gonna put it right here.
Don't subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to mine first, and then maybe come back and subscribe.
Yeah, great. Don't subscribe.
So
to this channel.
just go search Scouching, and you'll find it on YouTube. Twitter's another one. Twitter at Scouching. You can find my work at McKeensHockey.com as well. If you want to actually pay me money so I can pay my bills and watch hockey all day, you can sign up on patreon.com/Scouching. And that's about it for now. It's honestly like I'm in off-season mode and I barely remember the spiel anymore to plug myself, but I think that's good enough. That does the trick.
Good for you.
Thank
I mean,
very much.
hopefully that
I
means you're
also-
relaxed.
I'll give you a hint or a tip on YouTube expertise. What you're doing right now, I don't think is going to translate the way you expect it to YouTube. The only thing you can do is make a little ding go off in the corner up here, and then it'll like link people to a thing. I tried to do that in my first YouTube video that I ever made. I'm like, you can click here to do this. And then I realized they removed that feature when I finished editing it. And
That
so now
sucks.
there's a video on YouTube somewhere in the bowels of my channel where I'm pointing in different directions to nothing.
Nolan's still doing this.
Yeah,
unfortunate.
I left it in because I thought it was funny.
You can find the link to that video in the description down below.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But that's it. That's it for me. So I'll pass it on to someone,
All right.
someone smarter than me.
And Mikael, we'll put you right here.
Thanks. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, McGilligan and Holm. It's pretty easy. You can find the link probably in the description, I would assume. And I also have a Substack, mikaelholm.substack.com. I write about Swedish prospects. And Detroit's got a lot of them. It's going to draft a lot of them, more of them probably. So probably it's pretty smart for you to follow that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right. Now, Sam, we're going to put you
Up here?
up here. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
dope. All right, awesome. I have
This is
a
so heavy.
Twitter at Sam_McGilligan. I have work that I release on McKeen's hockey alongside Will with the video team next year. And I also have a Substack, which will just be a temporary home for a blog I'm starting about where I write about. I actually don't know. I'm going to just write about any unique, interesting hockey concept that shows up that people aren't writing about in my head. Half of them are probably going to suck, but that is kind of the point. So if you're interested in that, subscribe.
He's going to do pancake reviews of all the.
I'm going to do
the
pancake
GTA.
reviews at
Can
least
we? Can we
once
go
a
around
year.
real quick and everybody talk about their pancake experience? Mine
Yeah,
was
sure.
delicious.
Yep.
So when I ordered, they were like plasticware, and I was like, yes, and they were like condiments, and I was like, why would I need ketchup and mustard? No, which like so stupid of me. Morning hangover brain. And so I didn't have like I didn't have like the good syrup, it's like a little bit thin, or the butter, and so I was just using like the store-bought stuff. So that definitely brought it down a little bit, but that's through no fault of the pancakes nor the establishment from which I bought them, which is National Coney Island. So
Ah.
that's my
I did Leo's
6 out
Coney
of 10.
Island. I did
Nice.
Leo's Coney Island and actually got syrup, because when they asked me for
Yeah.
condiments, I said yes, syrup.
Well, you're a smarter man than me.
And yeah, I also
Ketchup and
got
mustard.
I also got chocolate chip. So it was a
Same.
really solid experience. Yeah, it was like it's
Wow.
like the highest, I don't know, like a 7.9, like right under an 8 out of 10,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah. I went to Stacked, and they were pretty good. I got a whole breakfast thing, but I needed to eat everything but the pancakes first because I was starving earlier today. But the pancakes were quite good. They're very, very big. I only ate one. I still
I've
one
got
more
like
left.
a solid percentage of mine left too.
President's Choice PC dark and robust maple syrup went on
man.
top of those bad boys.
That's the
So
best shit.
yeah, it is good stuff. But yeah, they were a solid 8. Nice and fluffy and thick, but a little like I ate one, and I think I'm.
a little much. A little much.
I got
this
mine
morning.
also from Stacked, as this is turning out to be an endorsement for the place.
Yeah, Stacked in Coney Island, the real winners of this podcast.
Yeah, really. Free advertising. I got the red velvet ones because I don't know. I just saw them and was like, I want something different. And they were good. I give good review, and the syrup was good. They were also extremely filling.
Yes.
And like Will, I have half of mine sitting behind me right now.
Same. I have more than half of mine. Now, Mikael, you bought yours out of the freezer, correct?
No, out of the fridge. Yeah, it was the Pop Bakery. Pop Bakery, they're American pancakes. I'm not sure if they're Swedish or whatever they are. I don't care. It was fine. I could heat them in the microwave, and I was happy to do.
Which is
so.
not an air fryer.
Yeah, there was a
because
big
we're
debate
known
before
for
we
air
went on
fryer.
about
It's
whether or
fucking
not
ridiculous.
pancakes should be heated up in an air fryer or a microwave. And I tend to side with Sam in that if you have the option to heat up your food via air fryer, you just
owns an air fryer? It's dumb.
well, you say that. You say that.
Because
You
what's
say
funny
that.
is
Does it have
I
an
said
oven?
this.
You don't tell an
No.
American that. You don't
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
Everyone starts off saying, "Oh, what do we need an air fryer for?" I got my mom an air fryer
Oh.
for a couple of years ago, and I was just like, "Here you go." And apparently, she didn't tell me, but her initial thought was, "Why did he get me this? We already have other things that heat food." And then after like a couple of months, she was
They're
like,
so
"No, I'm gonna be
great.
honest with you. I didn't want the air fryer at first, but I'm very happy you got it because it's amazing." And it's like, oh, how
Dude,
everyone eats their food now.
chicken in 10 minutes, the best chicken you've ever had.
Yeah,
like it's stupid.
The combination of ease of use and quality of food is so
Yeah.
high. Like,
Yeah.
just get
And
an
what
air
else you
fryer.
can cook
It's
chicken
like
on?
it's
the
like the
stove.
kitchen version of a bidet. You know, like you just don't realize
You can
like
use
the
you
functionality.
use the frying pan, and then you drop in some butter, and then you fry the chicken on the stove.
See, but that's bad for you because then you're introducing all those oils and fats that are probably extra. And I'm somebody who loves oil and fat to begin with, so I
Oil
cut
and
that
fat
where
is
I
what-
can.
Oil and fat is what gives the chicken taste. Are you just
Oh.
gonna eat a bland fucking chicken out of an air fryer?
No.
no,
That's
no,
what I'm.
no.
That's what I'm
You-
telling
you-
you.
This is what I mean.
you
This
get the
is
taste
what
from the
lack of
oils.
awareness.
Okay,
of
Listen,
air fryer.
listen. I love the fat and the oils, so I will leave that. You know, I like a good amount of skin on my chicken thighs, or even on my chicken. Like I like the fats and the oils to begin with. So the way I compromise so that I don't die is by then not putting it in more oil. You know, then I'm like, okay, let me cut a corner real quick here, and let me throw it in the air fryer. So I'm already getting the fattiness from this, you know, chicken thigh. I don't feel good about that, frankly, but I am going to feel good about not dropping it in a vat of hot oil.
I
That's-
only
it's-
eat chicken breasts, so like it's.
Well, that's your problem. Like, eat chicken thighs. It's the best chicken.
And as a guy who mostly eats chicken breast, Mikael, just put it in the goddamn air fryer and grow up.
Yeah. Or don't. Just
Or-
cook your,
or I
cook your
cook the
chicken breast
proper
in
way,
the oven. You
which
know?
is the grown-up way.
I feel like you need to start a GoFundMe or something. Like I've been missing out on how to
There's
properly eat food.
a lot of people
GoFundMe.
suggesting GoFundMe's for me lately. I'm not sure why.
What are some of the other reasons?
Get me to like some Jordan that I mentioned before, the Ottawa fan. He said someone should start a GoFundMe so I can go to the draft in Montreal. Which, like, sure, do that. I would love that, but I'd say no to the air frying just
No,
to the
I think
draft in
the
Montreal.
air fryer is a much better allocation of people's charity. So, thank you so much, boys. This was a lot of fun.
No
Thank
problem.
you to everybody who tuned in for our first YouTube show. It's a lot of fun hanging out with you guys too. So, we'll see you next time. I don't know when. This is very awkward.
We don't have an upload schedule.
If you have positive feedback, leave it in our comments. If you have negative feedback, please tell me privately. And we'll see you next time. Boom. There it is.
Beauty.